Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero was not born into infamy. He was a man of simple beginnings, raised in the working-class neighborhoods of Brooklyn in the early 20th century. His father, a stern but fair man, worked long hours in construction, while his mother tended to the household with unyielding care. From a young age, Lefty understood the delicate balance between survival and ambition, a lesson that would shape every choice he made in the decades to come. The streets of Brooklyn were unforgiving, a labyrinth of narrow alleys and bustling avenues where loyalty and reputation dictated one's place in the world. In this environment, Lefty learned quickly that strength was respected, but cunning and discretion were often more valuable. He navigated the neighborhoods with a sense of both caution and curiosity, aware that the lines between friend and foe were often blurred. By the time he reached adolescence, Lefty had begun to gravitate toward the world of organized crime, not out of desire for violence, but from necessity and the allure of opportunity. He witnessed older boys making money through illicit means, loan sharking, gambling, and small-time theft, and the admiration they commanded from their peers fascinated him. The Bonanno crime family, one of the 5 notorious mafia families in New York, dominated these neighborhoods, and their influence was impossible to ignore. Lefty's early interactions with these figures were cautious and calculated. He learned to speak softly, to listen more than he talked, and to observe patterns in behavior. Every smile, every hand gesture, every word mattered. It was in these early years that he honed the skills that would later define his criminal career: patience, negotiation, and the ability to read men with uncanny accuracy. Lefty's rise within the criminal world was not meteoric, but steady, a reflection of his methodical approach. He began with small errands, collecting debts, delivering messages, ensuring that transactions went smoothly, but even these minor tasks demanded precision and reliability. His superiors noticed his unwavering loyalty and his willingness to take calculated risks without drawing unnecessary attention. These traits earned him respect, and over time he was entrusted with increasingly significant responsibilities. It was during this period that he earned his nickname, Lefty, a moniker that hinted at both his dexterity and his unique approach to challenges, often tackling problems in ways others would not anticipate. Despite his growing notoriety within the mafia, Lefty remained remarkably grounded in his personal life. He valued friendship and family, and he maintained connections to the neighborhoods that had shaped him. Yet, the shadow of his chosen path loomed constantly. Every decision carried weight, every association could prove perilous. In a world where betrayal was as common as loyalty, Lefty's tendency to trust those around him would eventually become both his strength and his vulnerability. He believed that loyalty could inspire loyalty in return, a principle that guided his interactions with friends, associates, and even rivals. This philosophy, however noble in intention, placed him on a precarious edge, as the very people he trusted most were often capable of exploiting that faith for their own gain. The early 1970s marked a turning point in Lefty's life. By now, he had become a key figure within the Bonanno family, deeply involved in gambling operations and other lucrative enterprises. It was during this time that he encountered Joseph Pistone, an FBI agent operating undercover under the alias Donnie Brasco. Pistone was assigned to infiltrate the mafia and gather intelligence that could dismantle their operations from within. Lefty, unaware of Donnie's true identity, welcomed him into his inner circle. Their relationship was forged on a foundation of camaraderie, shared confidences, and mutual respect. Lefty admired Donnie's apparent competence, integrity, seeing in him a reliable ally in a world where genuine loyalty was scarce. As Donnie Brasco integrated deeper into the Bonanno family's operations, Lefty's trust in him grew. He introduced Donnie to influential members, shared the intricacies of their gambling networks, and even confided in him regarding sensitive family matters. Lefty's belief in the goodness of people blinded him to the possibility that Donnie's loyalty was a facade. Yet, this trust also revealed the human side of a man otherwise hardened by years of criminal engagement. Lefty was not merely a figure of intimidation. He was a man capable of warmth, humor, and genuine connection. These qualities made him both a formidable ally and a tragic figure, as they rendered him susceptible to the betrayal that loomed on the horizon. The nature of Lefty's world demanded constant vigilance. Mafia life was an intricate dance of power, secrecy, and calculated risk. Meetings were held in dimly lit back rooms, whispered conversation masked with casual banter, and alliances were constantly tested. Lefty's reputation as a man who could handle sensitive matters without error elevated his status, but it also increased the stakes. Every operation carried the potential for legal repercussions, rival disputes, or internal betrayal. Despite the inherent dangers, Lefty approached his responsibilities with a measured confidence, relying on his intuition and experience to navigate the treacherous waters of organized crime. His ability to balance risk with prudence became a defining characteristic of his career. Beneath the veneer of criminal enterprise, Lefty grappled with internal conflict. He was aware of the moral ambiguity surrounding his actions, yet he rationalized them as necessary for survival and prosperity in a world governed by violence and loyalty. His interactions with Donnie Brasco intensified these reflections. In Donnie, Lefty found a confidant who seemed to share his values, someone he could rely upon amidst the uncertainty that permeated every aspect of his existence. This bond, however, was built on fragile foundations, vulnerable to the revelations that would eventually unravel it. Lefty's story was, in essence, a testament to the complexities of human trust, the allure of loyalty, and the consequences of misjudging the intentions of others. The environment in which Lefty operated was unforgiving yet compelling. The streets of Brooklyn, the clandestine gatherings, the tense negotiations, and the ever-present threat of law enforcement created a world both exhilarating and perilous. Lefty navigated this reality with a blend of caution, intellect, and streetwise intuition. His actions were guided by a code and understanding of respect, honor, and obligation that, while informal, dictated the rhythm of his life. Within this framework he found purpose, influence, and identity, carving a place for himself in a landscape defined by secrecy and hierarchy. Lefty's journey, as it unfolded in the years leading to his involvement with Donnie Brasco, was marked by a delicate balance between ambition and caution, loyalty and vulnerability, human connection and the cold calculus of crime. He embodied the paradox of the mafia figure, simultaneously feared and admired, strategic yet deeply human, resilient yet ultimately susceptible to the consequences of misplaced trust. His story serves as both a cautionary tale and a vivid portrait of life within one of America's most notorious criminal organizations, illuminating the complex interplay between personal integrity, ambition, and the inexorable demands of a dangerous world. As the first threads of trust and betrayal were woven into his life with Donnie Brasco, Lefty's trajectory was set on a path that would define his legacy. The events that followed would test the limits of his judgment, the depth of his loyalty, and the resilience of his spirit. The foundation laid in these early years, the lessons of Brooklyn streets, the careful cultivation of alliances, the embrace of calculated risk prepared him for the challenges ahead, even as they foreshadowed the vulnerabilities that would ultimately shape his fate. Lefty's story was no longer just about survival. It had become a chronicle of human complexity, a narrative of trust, ambition, and the fragile boundaries that separate triumph from tragedy. The bond between Lefty Ruggiero and Donnie Brasco deepened with each passing day, forged in the crucible of a world defined by loyalty, risk, and the unspoken rules of the mafia. Lefty, ever cautious but inherently trusting, began to rely on Donnie in ways he had never done with anyone else. They spent long hours together, reviewing the intricate details of their gambling operations, organizing meetings with key associates, and managing the flow of money that kept the Bonanno family's empire running smoothly. In these moments, Lefty's natural warmth and affability were on full display. He joked with Donnie, shared stories from his youth, and even expressed his thoughts on the precarious nature of their world, revealing a level of openness rarely seen among men of his position. To Donnie, Lefty appeared as a steadfast ally, a mentor, and a friend, a man whose loyalty seemed unshakable, whose judgment was measured, and whose generosity extended beyond mere business dealings. As the duo navigated the perilous landscape of organized crime, Lefty's reputation within the Bonanno family continued to grow. He was respected not only for his competence in managing the family's operations, but also for his discretion, an invaluable trait in an organization where secrecy was paramount. Meetings were often held in the back rooms of small Italian restaurants, in private homes, or in nondescript offices where the presence of law enforcement was never far from their minds. Lefty moved through these environments with practiced ease, aware that a single misstep could jeopardize everything he had worked for. His ability to read people, detecting deceit, gauging intentions, and anticipating reactions was unparalleled. It was this skill that had initially made him an ideal candidate to trust Donnie Brasco, a man who, unbeknownst to Lefty, was a highly trained undercover FBI agent. The early days of their partnership were marked by mutual respect and the occasional shared thrill of success. Donnie proved himself capable in handling sensitive assignments, earning Lefty's admiration and further solidifying their bond. Together, they oversaw gambling operations that spanned neighborhoods, ensuring that debts were collected, wagers were paid, and disputes resolved without attracting undue attention. Lefty took pride in mentoring Donnie, guiding him through the nuances of mafia etiquette and the unwritten codes that governed their interaction. In turn, Donnie appeared eager to learn, absorbing every detail with diligence, and a seemingly genuine desire to be part of the inner circle. Lefty's trust, however, was a double-edged sword, one that would later expose him to profound betrayal. As the years passed, Lefty became increasingly involved in high-stakes ventures that demanded both strategic thinking and a willingness to engage in morally ambiguous activities. Loan-sharking operations required a delicate balance of intimidation and negotiation, while gambling rings demanded constant oversight to prevent theft or cheating. Lefty approached these challenges with meticulous care, often working long hours and meticulously planning every move. He understood the delicate dance of power within the mafia. Alliances could shift overnight, rivals could emerge from the shadows, and loyalty was both precious and fragile. Every decision carried weight, every interaction was fraught with potential consequences, and every moment demanded vigilance. Amid the high-pressure environment of organized crime, Lefty's personal life remained surprisingly grounded. He valued family and friendships, taking comfort in the simple pleasures that the streets of Brooklyn still offered. He would often visit local eateries, converse with neighbors, and maintain ties to the community that had shaped him. These moments of normalcy contrasted sharply with the clandestine world he navigated professionally, highlighting the duality of his existence. On one hand, he was a feared and respected figure within the Bonanno family. On the other, he was a man with ordinary desires, seeking connection, understanding, and a sense of belonging. It was his human side that made Lefty both relatable and tragic, a man caught between two worlds, striving to maintain equilibrium while surrounded by chaos. The introduction of Donnie Brasco into this environment created opportunities and tensions that Lefty could not fully comprehend. The FBI agent's integration into the mafia hierarchy provided a sense of validation for Lefty, who took pride in mentoring and protecting those he deemed trustworthy. He introduced Donnie to influential figures, guided him through delicate negotiation, and relied on his judgment in matters of business and loyalty. Yet, this growing trust was fraught with risk. In a world where betrayal could be as subtle as a misplaced glance or a whispered comment, Lefty's faith in Donnie exposed a vulnerability that few men in his position could afford. It was a testament to his character, his belief in the inherent goodness of those he trusted, even as it set the stage for inevitable heartbreak. The stakes grew higher as the Bonanno family became increasingly entangled in law enforcement scrutiny. Surveillance intensified, investigations deepened, and the pressure to maintain secrecy escalated. Lefty found himself navigating a precarious tightrope, balancing operational demands with the need to protect himself and those around him. The presence of Donnie Brasco, initially perceived as a reliable ally, became both a source of support and an unseen variable. Lefty's decisions, once guided by experience and intuition, now carried the weight of unknown consequences. The tension between trust and suspicion permeated every interaction, every meeting, and every operation, creating a constant undercurrent of anxiety beneath the surface of everyday business. Despite these pressures, Lefty remained committed to the principles that had guided him throughout his life: loyalty, honor, and the cultivation of trust. He navigated complex social dynamics within the mafia, mediating disputes, managing rivalries, and ensuring that operations ran smoothly. His reputation as a man of integrity, even within the morally ambiguous world of organized crime, earned him respect and admiration from colleagues and associates alike. He was seen as a stabilizing force, a figure whose judgment could be relied upon in moments of uncertainty. This perception, however, was built upon a foundation of trust that was far more fragile than he realized. In the backdrop of these professional challenges, Lefty's personal struggles persisted. He wrestled with the moral ambiguities of his life, the consequences of his choices, and the complex web of relationships that defined his existence. He was acutely aware that his position within the Bonanno family brought both privilege and peril, that every success carried with it the potential for catastrophic loss. Yet, he approached these dilemmas with a measured pragmatism, relying on experience, intuition, and the bonds he had formed with those he trusted most. The presence of Donnie Brasco amplified these dynamics, providing both companionship and an unseen threat that would ultimately redefine the trajectory of Lefty's life. As the operations expanded and the pressures intensified, Lefty's narrative became a study in contrasts, loyalty and betrayal, risk and reward, trust and suspicion. He navigated these complexities with a blend of strategic acumen and human vulnerability, embodying the duality of a man shaped by circumstance, choice, and the relentless demands of his environment. His story was not merely one of criminal enterprise. It was a portrait of human resilience, ambition, and the fragile nature of trust in a world where loyalty was as valuable as it was rare. Each decision, each interaction, each calculated risk contributed to the tapestry of his life, setting the stage for the pivotal events that would define his legacy. By the mid-1970s, Lefty's integration with Donnie Brasco and the Bonanno family had reached a level of profound complexity. The lines between friendship, mentorship, and operational necessity blurred, creating a delicate equilibrium that demanded constant attention. Lefty's trust in Donnie remained unwavering, even as the unseen forces of law enforcement closed in, weaving a web of tension and uncertainty around him. His world was one of constant vigilance, where every choice carried consequences and every alliance could be tested. In this environment, Lefty's character, defined by loyalty, intelligence, and an inherent belief in the value of trust, shone brightly, even as the shadows of betrayal and danger loomed ever larger. The story of Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero during this period is a vivid illustration of the human dimensions of organized crime, the relationships, the pressures, and the moral ambiguities that defined life within the mafia. It is a tale of ambition tempered by caution, of loyalty challenged by unseen forces, and of a man whose trust in others would ultimately shape his destiny. Lefty's narrative during these years underscores the delicate balance between personal integrity and survival, offering a compelling portrait of a life lived at the intersection of risk, loyalty, and the inexorable demands of a dangerous world. The deeper Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero became involved in the operations of the Bonanno crime family, the more complex and perilous his world became. Life in organized crime was a constant balancing act between ambition and survival, and Lefty navigated it with a combination of careful planning, intuition, and the unshakable belief that loyalty could be trusted even when the world seemed intent on proving otherwise. His bond with Donnie Brasco had grown to a point where Lefty began to consider him indispensable, someone whose counsel and reliability were as crucial as any veteran member of the family. Every meeting, every operation, every conversation with Donnie further cemented this bond. Even as the undercurrent of law enforcement scrutiny tightened invisibly around them, Lefty's daily routine had transformed into a structured pattern of vigilance and execution. He spent mornings reviewing ledgers, ensuring that debts were collected promptly, and confirming that gambling operations ran without discrepancies. Afternoons were reserved for meetings, both formal and informal, with fellow associates and family enforcers. These gatherings were not simply about business, they were exercises in power, strategy, and observation. Lefty could discern tensions, ambitions, and hidden agendas with remarkable acuity. Subtle shifts in tone, fleeting expressions, and carefully chosen words revealed more than casual conversation ever could. He had become not just a participant in the family's operations, but a masterful observer, a man whose judgment carried weight and whose insight was invaluable. Despite the outward appearance of control, Lefty's world was fraught with tension. The Bonanno family operated in a constant state of alert, aware that rival factions and law enforcement were ever present. Each transaction, each negotiation, carried the potential for disaster. A single misstep could provoke violent retaliation or attract legal consequences. Lefty understood these stakes intimately, and he approached each task with precision. He was not reckless. He calculated risks, weighed outcomes, and often relied on intuition honed through years of navigating Brooklyn streets and the intricate hierarchies of the mafia. Even in moments of apparent calm, he remained vigilant, aware that danger could emerge from the most unexpected corners. The relationship with Donnie Brasco added both comfort and complication to Lefty's life. On one hand, Donnie's apparent competence and loyalty offered reassurance. On the other, Lefty was unconsciously exposing himself to vulnerabilities that no other member of the family could exploit. He shared operational details, confided in Donnie about internal family dynamics, and even included him in sensitive financial dealings. To Lefty, Donnie was more than an associate. He was a trusted confidant, a partner, in navigating the treacherous currents of mafia life. Yet, the very trust that bound them together was precarious, a fragile thread, whose strength depended entirely on the integrity of the man at the other end. In the evenings, Lefty often reflected on the duality of his existence. The demands of criminal enterprise were relentless, yet he sought moments of personal grounding, quiet walks through the neighborhood, visits to local diners, or casual conversations with neighbors who knew nothing of the dangers lurking just beyond their streets. These interludes provided brief respite, a sense of normalcy amid chaos. They reminded him of the life he had once known, the values instilled during childhood, and the sense of community that had shaped him long before the Bonanno family became the central axis of his world. It was in these quieter moments that the human side of Lefty emerged most vividly, a man capable of warmth, reflection, and loyalty, not born of necessity but of genuine regard. The stakes escalated further as law enforcement operations intensified. Surveillance grew more sophisticated. Undercover agents infiltrated deeper into the organization, and federal authorities became increasingly determined to dismantle the mafia's intricate network. The pressure on Lefty increased exponentially, demanding ever greater discretion, patience, and strategic thinking. Each interaction, each meeting, and each transaction had to be conducted with meticulous care. Mistakes were not easily forgiven, and misjudgments could carry consequences far beyond financial loss. Lefty's acumen and experience were tested repeatedly, but he continued to navigate these challenges with a combination of calm authority and careful observation, his instincts finely tuned to detect subtle threats. Amid these pressures, Lefty's personal relationships played a pivotal role in his ability to endure. He relied on a tight circle of trusted friends and family, individuals whose loyalty had been proven over years of shared experiences and mutual respect. These relationships provided emotional support, a buffer against the constant tension of criminal life. Yet, even within this circle, trust had to be earned and maintained. Lefty's interactions were measured, deliberate, and reflective of his understanding that human connection, like financial operations, required vigilance, foresight, and strategic management. He knew that vulnerability could be exploited, and he guarded his emotional and operational integrity with the same care he applied to the family's business. As Lefty navigated these dual realities, professional complexity and personal grounding, the partnership with Donnie Brasco reached new dimensions. Donnie became increasingly embedded in critical operations, trusted with responsibility that previously would have been reserved for seasoned veterans. Lefty's guidance and mentorship played a key role in this integration, fostering a bond that appeared unbreakable. They worked together on expanding gambling networks, negotiating with rivals, and ensuring that the Bonanno family maintained its dominance in Brooklyn. Each success reinforced Lefty's belief in Donnie's loyalty and competence, strengthening the emotional and operational ties that bound them. Yet, unbeknownst to Lefty, these very successes were simultaneously facilitating a covert operation that threatened to unravel everything he had built. The moral complexity of Lefty's life grew increasingly pronounced as he confronted the consequences of his actions. He was fully aware of the illegality of his operations, yet he rationalized them as a means of survival and influence within a world defined by strict hierarchies and unwritten codes. His engagement in loan sharking, gambling, and other illicit ventures was accompanied by careful oversight, an understanding of the legal risks, and an acute awareness of the social ramifications. Lefty's personal code, while not aligned with conventional morality, governed his decisions and interactions, ensuring that he operated with a sense of honor, discretion, and strategic prudence. Within the chaotic environment of the mafia, this code became his anchor, a guiding principle amid uncertainty and risk. The complexity of Lefty's narrative was compounded by the intricate web of relationships within the Bonanno family. Alliances were constantly shifting, rivalries simmered beneath the surface, and trust was a commodity more valuable than money. Lefty's ability to navigate these dynamics was critical to his survival and success. He mediated disputes, negotiated agreements, and maintained the delicate balance of power that allowed operations to continue without internal disruption. His reputation as a fair, reliable, and discreet figure elevated his status and ensured that his counsel was sought in matters both operational and personal. This influence, however, was always contingent upon the fragile foundation of trust and loyalty that defined the Mafia's internal hierarchy. As events unfolded, Lefty's world was shaped by an ongoing tension between loyalty and betrayal, trust and suspicion, risk and reward. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco, his management of critical operations, and his navigation of the complex social hierarchies of organized crime created a life of extraordinary challenge and consequence. Each decision carried weight. Each interaction held potential for both advancement and peril, and each moment demanded strategic calculation. Lefty's experience, intuition, and adherence to his personal code enabled him to navigate this environment with remarkable skill. Yet, the inherent vulnerability of his trusting nature remained a persistent undercurrent. In this period, the narrative of Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero illustrates not only the operational and strategic dimension of life within the Bonanno family, but also the profound human dimensions of trust, loyalty, and ambition. Lefty's story is a study in the delicate interplay between personal integrity and survival, between the pursuit of influence and the ever-present specter of betrayal. It is a testament to the complexity of human relationships, the allure of loyalty, the consequences of placing trust in a world defined by secrecy, risk, and power. Each operation, each interaction, and each calculated risk contributed to the tapestry of Lefty's life, shaping a narrative that was as compelling as it was dangerous. By the late 1970s, Lefty's integration with Donnie Brasco had reached a critical juncture. The trust between them, built over years of shared operations, mentorship, and camaraderie, had become a defining element of Lefty's life. Yet, as law enforcement efforts intensified and the pressures of organized crime mounted, this trust would soon be tested in ways Lefty could never have anticipated. The choices he made, the bonds he nurtured, and the strategies he employed during this period would ultimately determine the trajectory of his life, setting the stage for a dramatic confrontation with the hidden forces that threatened the very foundation of his existence. By the late 1970s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's life had settled into a rhythm dictated by the unforgiving demands of organized crime, yet punctuated by moments of camaraderie and calculated reflection. Each day presented a delicate balancing act, maintaining dominance over gambling operations, managing the subtle tension within the Bonanno family, and nurturing his trust in Donnie Brasco, whose presence had become increasingly indispensable. Lefty moved through this world with the practiced ease of a man who had spent decades learning the nuances of influence and power. Yet there was an underlying fragility to his confidence, rooted in the very trust that defined his relationships. The operational demands on Lefty had never been greater. The gambling rings he oversaw spanned multiple neighborhoods, each requiring careful management to ensure that the flow of money remained steady and disputes were resolved before they escalated. He coordinated with a network of collectors, bookkeepers, and enforcers, all while remaining vigilant for signs of betrayal, incompetence, or law enforcement intrusion. His keen sense of observation allowed him to detect inconsistencies that others overlooked. A nervous glance, a hesitation in speech, or a small deviation in routine could reveal much more than words ever could. It was this combination of patience, insight, and street-honed intelligence that allowed Lefty to maintain authority, earning the respect and deference of those around him. Amid these operational responsibilities, Lefty's relationship with Donnie Brasco continued to deepen, evolving beyond that of mere professional collaboration into something resembling genuine friendship. Donnie's integration into the Bonanno family had been seamless, guided by Lefty's mentorship and the trust he placed in him. Together, they planned operations, resolved conflicts, and navigated the intricate social hierarchy of the Mafia. Lefty admired Donnie's apparent competence and loyalty, often sharing insights about family dynamics, business intricacies, and the subtleties of negotiating influence. These moments revealed the more human side of Lefty, a man capable of warmth, humor, and empathy, even in the shadow of a life dominated by crime and secrecy. Yet, as Lefty's trust in Donnie strengthened, so too did the stakes of their operation. Law enforcement efforts against organized crime were intensifying, employing increasingly sophisticated methods to infiltrate and dismantle mafia networks. Federal agents were more persistent, wiretaps more invasive, and surveillance increasingly comprehensive. The very skills that had allowed Lefty to thrive, his discretion, intelligence, and judgment, were now being tested against unseen forces with unprecedented access and capability. In this environment, even minor oversights could have catastrophic consequences. Lefty's natural caution and meticulous attention to detail were his most valuable assets, but they could not entirely shield him from the hidden dangers lurking within the organization. The complexity of the Bonanno family's internal dynamics added another layer of tension. Alliances were fragile, rivalries simmered beneath the surface, and trust was both a prized commodity and a dangerous vulnerability. Lefty's reputation as a fair, reliable, and insightful figure provided him with influence, but it also placed him under scrutiny. He was often called upon to mediate disputes, advise on strategic decisions, and manage operations that had implications far beyond his immediate sphere of control. Each task demanded a careful balance of diplomacy and authority, requiring him to assess motives, anticipate reactions, and act decisively while minimizing exposure to risk. It was a demanding role, one that left little room for error or complacency. In the midst of these professional pressures, Lefty continued to value the grounding effects of personal connections. He nurtured relationships with family members, old friends, and trusted associates, seeking moments of normalcy that contrasted with the constant tension of mafia life. Quiet walks through familiar neighborhoods, casual visits to local diners, and conversations with those unconnected to organized crime offered respite from the high-stakes environment that dominated his professional existence. These moments reinforced his sense of identity beyond the confines of his criminal activities, reminding him of the values, loyalty, and community bonds that had shaped him long before his rise within the Bonanno family. Lefty's mentorship of Donnie Brasco became increasingly critical as the operations expanded in scale and complexity. Donnie was entrusted with sensitive tasks, from overseeing high-value gambling operations to interacting with influential figures within the family. Lefty's guidance ensured that these operations remained secure, and his unwavering trust provided Donnie with both confidence and credibility among the mafia's inner circle. This dynamic, while professionally effective, introduced a profound personal vulnerability. The very loyalty that Lefty prized most had become a potential source of exposure. Unbeknownst to him, Donnie's allegiance lay with federal authorities, and each shared secret, each insight offered in confidence carried consequences that Lefty could not foresee. The human dimensions of Lefty's life were as intricate as the operations he managed. He was acutely aware of the moral ambiguities inherent in his existence, the illegality of his activities, consequences of violence, and the manipulation that defined interpersonal relationships within the mafia. Yet he rationalized these actions as necessary for survival and influence, guided by a personal code that emphasized discretion, respect, and the careful cultivation of loyalty. This code governed his interactions, informing both operational decisions and personal relationships. Lefty's ability to balance pragmatic decision-making with genuine human connection allowed him to navigate a perilous world while retaining a sense of integrity, however defined by his circumstances. The pressures of life within organized crime were magnified by the ever-present threat of betrayal. In a system where ambition, greed, and survival instincts frequently collided, trust was fragile and loyalty constantly tested. Lefty's approach to this reality was both strategic and emotional. He carefully evaluated associates, observed patterns of behavior, and relied on intuition developed through years of experience. Yet he also allowed himself to form genuine attachments, particularly with Donnie Brasco, whose seeming competence and allegiance provided reassurance amidst the constant uncertainty. This dual approach, combining analytical rigor with personal trust, defined Lefty's operational style and shaped the trajectory of his life during this period. As the late 1970s progressed, Lefty's prominence within the Bonanno family continued to grow, and his role in the integration of Donnie Brasco became more pronounced. Their collaboration extended to complex financial schemes, negotiation of influential contacts, and oversight of operations that carried significant risk and reward. Lefty's meticulous attention to detail, ability to read human behavior, and unwavering loyalty to those he trusted made him an indispensable figure. Yet the very qualities that ensured his success, patience, empathy, and trust, were the same qualities that rendered him vulnerable to betrayal. setting the stage for the dramatic events that would soon define his legacy. The narrative of Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero during this time illustrates the intricate interplay between operational skill, human trust, and the moral ambiguities of mafia life. He navigated high-stakes gambling, interpersonal dynamics, and the pervasive threat of law enforcement with a combination of intelligence, intuition, and emotional resilience. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco highlighted the tension between loyalty and exposure, revealing both the strengths and vulnerabilities inherent in trusting relationships within a clandestine, dangerous world. Lefty's story is emblematic of the broader human struggle to maintain integrity, connection, and agency within an environment dominated by secrecy, risk, and the constant negotiation of power. Amid the ever-increasing pressures, Lefty remained committed to the principles that had guided him throughout his life: loyalty, fairness, and the cultivation of trust. He balanced the demands of organized crime with personal reflection, grounding himself in the community, family ties, and friendships that provided perspective beyond the immediate stakes of his operation. Each decision, each interaction, and each calculated risk contributed to the evolving narrative of his life, creating a rich tapestry that combined professional acumen with human vulnerability. Lefty's story during this period is a testament to the complexities of mafia life, the weight of trust, and the enduring tension between ambition and the moral compromises required to sustain it. As Lefty moved through the final years of the 1970s, his trajectory was defined by a delicate equilibrium, managing high-risk operations, mentoring a trusted ally in Donnie Brasco, and navigating a world in which betrayal and surveillance were constant threats. His reputation, forged through years of discretion, intelligence, and strategic insight, afforded him respect and influence within the Bonanno family. Yet the very trust that defined his relationships would ultimately become the fulcrum upon which his future teetered, shaping the choices, challenges, and consequences that lay ahead. Lefty's life during this period exemplifies the interplay between human loyalty, calculated risk, and the inexorable pressures of organized crime, setting the stage for the defining moments that would soon unfold. By the early 1980s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's life had evolved into a complex web of trust, ambition, and danger, with each day presenting new challenges that tested both his judgment and resilience. His position within the Bonanno crime family had solidified over decades of meticulous work, strategic thinking, and an unwavering commitment to loyalty. Yet the same qualities that had elevated him, patience, discretion, and an instinctive understanding of human behavior, were now being tested in unprecedented ways. The operations he managed were larger, more sophisticated, and under far greater scrutiny from both law enforcement and rival factions. Every interaction, every decision, carried consequences that could ripple through the intricate hierarchy of the mafia, and Lefty knew it. The trust Lefty placed in Donnie Brasco had become central to his sense of security and operational success. Donnie's integration into the family was seamless, guided by Lefty's mentorship and reinforced by their daily collaboration on critical operations. Together, they coordinated high-stakes gambling ventures, resolved disputes among associates, and navigated the treacherous waters of internal family politics. Lefty valued Donnie not only as an operative but also as a confidant, someone whose judgment he relied upon in moments of uncertainty. Their conversations often went beyond business, touching on the philosophies of loyalty, complexities of human nature, and the subtle dynamics of power that governed the mafia. In these exchanges, Lefty revealed a side of himself rarely seen by others, a man capable of reflection, humor, and genuine connection. Despite this growing partnership, Lefty's environment remained perilous. Rival families constantly vied for territory and influence, and law enforcement efforts intensified with every passing month. Surveillance had become more sophisticated, investigations more invasive, and the risk of exposure greater than ever before. Lefty moved through this landscape with a combination of caution and confidence, carefully orchestrating operations to minimize detection while maintaining profitability. He relied on a network of trusted associates to implement strategies, monitor rival activity, and safeguard sensitive information. Every move required precision. A single misstep could compromise months of work or provoke violent retaliation. Amid these professional pressures, Lefty continued to maintain personal connections that anchored him to the world beyond crime. He remained in contact with family and friends from his Brooklyn neighborhood, visited local businesses, and engaged in casual interactions that offered a semblance of normalcy. These moments were brief but meaningful, providing perspective and reminding him of the values instilled during his upbringing. They served as a counterbalance to the high-stakes tension of his daily operation, grounding him in a sense of identity that extended beyond the mafia. Lefty's ability to navigate both worlds, professional and personal, was a testament to his adaptability, intelligence, and emotional resilience. The moral complexity of Lefty's life was an ever-present undercurrent. He was acutely aware of the illegality of his actions and the ethical compromises they entailed. Loan sharking, gambling, and other illicit activities were not merely financial pursuits. They were exercises in power, influence, and survival. Lefty rationalized these actions through a personal code that emphasized discretion, loyalty, and responsibility toward those who depended on him. While his operations exploited vulnerabilities and operated outside the law, Lefty approached them with a sense of strategic integrity, ensuring that the consequences were carefully managed and that harm was minimized whenever possible. This moral balancing act defined both his personal and professional conduct, shaping his interactions with associates, family members, and allies like Donnie Brasco. The relationship with Donnie continued to evolve, becoming increasingly central to Lefty's operations and sense of judgment. Donnie was entrusted with significant responsibilities, from overseeing financial transactions to mediating disputes between high-ranking members. Lefty's guidance and mentorship were instrumental in preparing him for these challenges, and their collaboration reinforced Lefty's belief in the value of loyalty and competence. Yet this trust also exposed a critical vulnerability. Lefty's willingness to confide in Donnie, to share strategic insights and operational detail, created the conditions for a profound betrayal, one that he could not yet foresee. It was a stark reminder of the fragile line between trust and exposure, a line that would soon define the trajectory of his life. As the Bonanno family's operations expanded, Lefty found himself increasingly entangled in high-pressure situations that required both strategic calculation and rapid response. Disputes between associates, conflicts over territory, and the constant threat of law enforcement intervention demanded vigilance, foresight, and decisiveness. Lefty's ability to navigate these challenges relied not only on experience but also on a deep understanding of human psychology. He could anticipate the behavior of colleagues, rivals, and subordinates with remarkable accuracy, predicting reactions and managing outcomes with minimal disruption. This skill, combined with his operational expertise, allowed Lefty to maintain authority and influence even in moments of uncertainty. Yet, beneath this carefully constructed facade of control, Lefty was not immune to anxiety and doubt. The pressures of life in organized crime were relentless, and the stakes were higher than ever. Each day brought the potential for financial loss, violent conflict, or legal exposure, and each decision carried weighty consequences. Lefty's trust in Donnie, while a source of reassurance, was also a source of vulnerability. He had invested emotionally and professionally in a partnership whose foundations were ultimately unseen, dependent entirely on the integrity of another man whose true allegiance remained hidden. This tension, the coexistence of reliance and uncertainty, defined much of Lefty's experience during this period, shaping his decisions, relationships, and outlook. The narrative of Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero during this time illustrates the delicate interplay between loyalty, risk, and the moral ambiguities of organized crime. He navigated a world of high-stakes operations, internal family politics, and relentless external pressures with intelligence, patience, and an unwavering commitment to those he trusted. At the same time, he grappled with the human dimensions of his existence: friendship, mentorship, vulnerability, and the desire for meaningful connection amidst a life dominated by secrecy and danger. Lefty's story is emblematic of the challenges faced by those who operate at the intersection of power and risk, where personal values and professional exigencies must coexist in an environment defined by volatility and consequence. By the early 1980s, Lefty's life had become a complex tapestry, woven from loyalty, ambition, and the constant negotiation of risk. He maintained authority within the Bonanno family, nurtured the bond with Donnie Brasco, and managed operations that demanded both strategic thinking and meticulous attention to detail. Yet the ever-present threat of betrayal, unseen, unpredictable, and potentially devastating, loomed over every interaction. Lefty's trust, patience, and operational acumen would soon be tested in ways that would define the course of his life, illuminating the delicate balance between human connection, loyalty, and survival. In a world where the consequences of misjudgment were absolute, the story of Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero during this period is not merely a chronicle of criminal enterprise. It is a study of human resilience, strategic intelligence, and the profound consequences of trust. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco highlights the complexities of relationships in a world defined by secrecy and risk, illustrating how loyalty can be both a source of strength and a potential avenue for vulnerability. Lefty's ability to navigate these dynamics, maintain operational control, and preserve personal integrity amidst danger underscores the enduring tension that defined his existence. Each decision, each alliance, and each calculated risk contributed to a narrative that is both compelling and tragic, revealing the intricate interplay between human trust, ambition, and the inexorable demands of life within organized crime. As Lefty continued to manage the operations of the Bonanno family and cultivate his bond with Donnie, he remained acutely aware of the stakes that defined his existence. The duality of trust and risk, loyalty and betrayal, defined every choice he made. His story during this period serves as a vivid reminder of the complexity of life within organized crime, the human dimensions of loyalty and connection, and the enduring consequences of decisions made in a world where secrecy, danger, and ambition are inseparable. Lefty's life, marked by strategic brilliance and human vulnerability, was moving steadily toward a confrontation that would test the very foundations of his trust, shaping the ultimate trajectory of his legacy. By the time the mid-1980s approached, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero had become deeply enmeshed in the intricate workings of the Bonanno crime family, a position earned through years of meticulous effort, loyalty, and an acute understanding of human behavior. Every aspect of his daily existence was defined by vigilance, calculation, and the constant negotiation of trust. The mafia world was one of perpetual motion. Alliances shifted like sand, rivalry simmered beneath the surface, and law enforcement surveillance pressed ever closer. Lefty had long since learned that even a momentary lapse could trigger a cascade of consequences. For him, life had become a careful balance between ambition and survival, trust and suspicion, human connection and the cold calculus of crime. Lefty's relationship with Donnie Brasco had grown into one of the central pillars of his operational life. Donnie, who had been gradually integrated into the inner circles of the Bonanno family, had earned responsibilities that few outsiders ever received. Lefty's guidance, mentorship, and personal trust had enabled Donnie to navigate the complex social hierarchies, operational logistics, and subtle politics of the mafia with apparent ease. For Lefty, Donnie was more than a partner in business. He was a confidant, a sounding board, and in many ways a surrogate for the trust he longed to place in another human being within a world where betrayal was commonplace. Yet this trust, so carefully cultivated, also introduced a profound vulnerability, one that would come to define the trajectory of his life. The operations under Lefty's supervision were becoming increasingly sophisticated. High-stakes gambling rings spanned multiple neighborhoods, requiring meticulous bookkeeping, precise coordination, and constant oversight. Loan sharking operations demanded a delicate balance of intimidation and negotiation, ensuring that debts were collected without creating unnecessary conflict. Every transaction, every interaction carried layers of potential risk. Lefty had honed an instinctive ability to read the intentions of those around him, to anticipate problems before they arose, and to resolve disputes with both authority and discretion. His reputation for competence and fairness earned him influence within the Bonanno family, making him both respected and relied upon in moments of tension. Despite his immersion in criminal operations, Lefty's personal life retained elements of grounding and reflection. He maintained ties to family, long-standing friendships, and his Brooklyn neighborhood where the rhythm of everyday life offered a stark contrast to the clandestine activities he managed. These moments, whether a casual conversation with a neighbor, a meal at a local diner, or a brief visit with a family member, provided him with perspective and a measure of emotional stability. They reminded him of the values and experiences that had shaped him long before organized crime became central to his identity. These human connections, while seemingly ordinary, were critical to Lefty's sense of self amidst the constant pressure and peril of mafia life. By now, Lefty's world was increasingly defined by moral complexity and operational nuance. He was keenly aware of the illegality and ethical ambiguity of his actions, yet he rationalized them as necessary for maintaining influence and survival in an environment governed by hierarchy and power. His personal code, emphasizing loyalty, discretion, and responsibility, guided both his professional decisions and personal relationships. Even within a life dominated by secrecy and risk, Lefty sought to act with a measure of fairness and honor, ensuring that operations ran smoothly and that associates and subordinates were treated with respect. This code shaped not only the success of his ventures but also the depth of his trust in those around him, particularly in Donnie Brasco. The stakes of Lefty's life escalated as the pressures of law enforcement intensified. Surveillance had become more sophisticated, investigations deeper, and the threat of exposure constant. Federal agents were patient, methodical, and relentless in their pursuit of organized crime, and every action Lefty took had the potential to draw unwanted attention. The strategies he employed to safeguard operations required foresight, adaptability, and a continuous assessment of risk. Lefty's experience, intuition, and ability to read human behavior were invaluable assets, yet they could not fully eliminate the unseen dangers lurking in the shadows. Each meeting, each negotiation, and each financial transaction carried with it a subtle but ever-present threat. Within the Bonanno family, internal dynamics added another layer of complexity. Alliances and rivalries were fluid, loyalty was constantly tested, and power was negotiated through both subtle influence and overt action. Lefty's reputation for fairness, discretion, and strategic insight made him a respected figure whose opinion carried weight. He was often called upon to mediate disputes, resolve operational challenges, and provide counsel in delicate situations. Yet this influence came with its own pressures. Being at the center of decision-making exposed Lefty to scrutiny, expectation, and the constant potential for conflict. The intricate balance of trust, authority, and strategic foresight became a defining feature of his life, requiring both mental acuity and emotional resilience. The human dimension of Lefty's life was as significant as his professional undertakings. He valued friendship, mentorship, and meaningful connection, seeking bonds that extended beyond transactional interactions. His relationship with Donnie Brasco exemplified this, blending professional collaboration with personal trust and camaraderie. Lefty confided in Donnie, sharing insights into both the operational and human elements of mafia life. He offered guidance, reassurance, and the wisdom gleaned from decades of navigating a world of hidden danger and constant scrutiny. In return, Donnie's apparent competence and loyalty reinforced Lefty's sense of stability, providing him with a measure of confidence that few other relationships could offer. Yet the very qualities that made Lefty successful, his trust, empathy, and willingness to mentor, were also sources of vulnerability. In placing his faith in Donnie, Lefty was unknowingly creating an avenue for exposure and eventual betrayal. The foundation of trust that he had cultivated so carefully, built on years of experience and a keen understanding of human behavior, was ultimately dependent on the unseen motivations of another man. This tension, the intersection of reliance and risk, underscored much of Lefty's existence during this period. It was a reminder that in a world defined by secrecy, power, and criminal enterprise, even the most carefully maintained relationships carried inherent danger. Lefty's operational acumen continued to be tested as the scale and complexity of mafia operations expanded. Financial oversight, coordination of multiple gambling rings, and management of high-risk loan sharking activities demanded constant attention. Each move required strategic planning, foresight, and a deep understanding of both human behavior and the mechanics of organized crime. Lefty's ability to anticipate problems, mediate conflicts, and maintain operational continuity became increasingly critical to the success of the Bonanno family's endeavors. His reputation for competence, discretion, and loyalty not only ensured operational stability but also solidified his standing within the organization. Amid these challenges, Lefty's reflections on loyalty, trust, and human nature became increasingly pronounced. The moral ambiguities of his life, the consequences of betrayal, and the delicate balance between personal and professional priorities weighed heavily on him. Yet he continued to operate with a sense of purpose, guided by the principles that had shaped his life: discretion, fairness, and a belief in the value of human trust. These qualities allowed him to navigate an environment of constant danger while maintaining a sense of identity and integrity. Lefty's story during this period is emblematic of the intricate interplay between human relationship, operational skill, and the ever-present specter of risk that defines life within organized crime. As the 1980s progressed, Lefty's trajectory was defined by a confluence of trust, ambition, and vulnerability. His partnership with Donnie Brasco had become central to both his operational success and his personal sense of security. Yet the hidden reality of Donnie's allegiance posed an existential threat to everything Lefty had built. Each decision, each operation, and each interaction carried layers of consequence that extended far beyond the immediate moment. Lefty's story is a vivid illustration of the human dimensions of organized crime: the friendships, the mentorship, the trust, and the eventual exposure that emerge when loyalty collides with hidden agendas. By the close of this chapter in his life, Lefty Ruggiero embodied the paradox of organized crime: a man simultaneously powerful and vulnerable, capable of both strategic brilliance and profound trust. His decisions, actions, and relationships exemplified the delicate balance required to survive and succeed in a world defined by secrecy, risk, and shifting loyalties. The stage was set for events that would challenge the very foundation of his life, testing the resilience, judgment, and human connections that had sustained him through decades of peril and ambition. Lefty's narrative is a testament to the complexity of human trust, the consequences of loyalty, and the intricate dance between survival and ambition that defines life within the Mafia. By the mid-1980s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's existence had become a delicate equilibrium of trust, calculated risk, and the relentless demands of Mafia life. Every decision carried weight, every interaction required caution, and every operation demanded precision. Lefty's reputation as a skilled and dependable member of the Bonanno crime family had grown, cemented by decades of unwavering loyalty, acute intuition, and strategic acumen. Yet even with all of his experience, he could not completely insulate himself from the hidden threats inherent in a world defined by secrecy, ambition, and betrayal. Life at this stage was a constant negotiation between power, human connection, and the ever-present shadow of danger. Lefty's bond with Donnie Brasco had become central to his day-to-day existence, both professionally and personally. Donnie's seeming competence and loyalty allowed Lefty to entrust him with significant responsibility, from overseeing intricate gambling operations to mediating disputes within the family. The trust between them had grown to the point where Lefty considered Donnie indispensable, relying on him not only for operational execution, but also as a sounding board for decisions that carried far-reaching consequences. Their collaboration went beyond mere business. It was a partnership built on mutual respect, mentorship, and the belief that they were aligned in purpose. Lefty's mentorship shaped Donnie's integration into the family, fostering a sense of inclusion and authority that few outsiders ever achieved. Despite the trust and apparent stability, Lefty's world was marked by tension and uncertainty. The Bonanno family operated in a climate of constant vigilance, acutely aware of rival factions, potential informants, and intensifying law enforcement surveillance. Federal agents had grown more sophisticated in their efforts to infiltrate organized crime, employing covert surveillance, wiretaps, and undercover operations. Every transaction, every meeting, and every conversation was subject to scrutiny, making discretion an essential survival skill. Lefty's experience and instincts were invaluable in navigating these pressures. He had an uncanny ability to anticipate threats, detect inconsistencies, and assess the character of those around him, ensuring that operations remained secure and that trust was not misplaced. In the realm of business, Lefty oversaw operations with meticulous attention to detail. His gambling rings required constant monitoring to prevent cheating, theft, or disputes, and loan sharking activities demanded the careful calibration of intimidation and negotiation. Collectors and enforcers reported directly to him, executing tasks under his watchful eye and adhering to his standards for discretion and effectiveness. Lefty's capacity to balance authority with personal rapport enabled him to maintain loyalty among subordinates, fostering an environment where operations could thrive despite external pressures. Yet even in this professional sphere, the human element remained central: relationship, judgment, and trust were as critical as any financial ledger or operational plan. Lefty's personal life continued to serve as an anchor amid the tension and danger of mafia activity. Visits with family, casual interactions in his Brooklyn neighborhood, and moments of quiet reflection provided a contrast to the high-stakes world he inhabited. These interactions reminded him of his roots and offered respite from the constant demands of organized crime. They reinforced his understanding of loyalty and community, values that had long guided his decisions and relationships. Even as his professional life became increasingly complex and risky, Lefty relied on these connections to maintain a sense of balance and perspective, grounding him in the human experience beyond the clandestine world of the mafia. The moral and ethical dimensions of Lefty's life were constantly in tension. He was fully aware of the illegality of his activities and the potential harm they could cause, yet he operated according to a personal code emphasizing loyalty, discretion, and responsibility. He rationalized his actions as necessary for survival and influence within an environment defined by hierarchy, power, and danger. Lefty's code guided him not only in operational matters but also in the cultivation of trust and relationships. He sought to treat associates, subordinates, and even rivals with fairness, ensuring that disputes were resolved without unnecessary violence or betrayal. This balance of pragmatism and morality defined his conduct and underpinned the respect he commanded within the family. As Donnie Brasco assumed greater responsibilities, Lefty's mentorship became increasingly critical. He guided Donnie through complex operations, advised him on interpersonal dynamics within the family, and facilitated his integration into strategic decisions. This partnership was both practical and personal. Lefty confided in Donnie in ways he rarely did with others, sharing insights about operational strategy, family politics, and the nuances of loyalty. Donnie's apparent competence and trustworthiness provided reassurance, allowing Lefty to delegate responsibilities with confidence. Yet this deep trust also exposed Lefty to profound risk. Unbeknownst to him, Donnie's allegiance lay elsewhere, and every shared secret, every operational detail, and every expression of confidence was setting the stage for eventual betrayal. Within the family, Lefty's influence continued to expand. He was recognized as a mediator, strategist, and reliable executor of critical tasks. Colleagues sought his advice, rivals acknowledged his authority, and subordinates followed his directives with a mix of respect and necessity. This influence carried both opportunity and responsibility. Decisions had far-reaching consequences, and mistakes could provoke violence, financial loss, or legal repercussions. Lefty's ability to navigate these pressures with foresight and composure was a testament to his experience and skill. He relied on observation, intuition, and careful analysis to assess situations, predict outcomes, and maintain control in a dynamic and often unpredictable environment. Despite his operational success, Lefty remained vulnerable to the hidden realities of his world. Loyalty, the very quality he prized and cultivated, was not universally reciprocated, and the presence of undercover law enforcement agents introduced risks that could not be fully mitigated. His trust in Donnie Brasco, while seemingly well-placed, created an exposure that Lefty could not have foreseen. This juxtaposition between the confidence derived from loyalty and the peril inherent in hidden threats defined much of Lefty's experience. It illustrated the fragile balance between human connection and operational security in a world where trust was rare and betrayal often catastrophic. The narrative of Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero during this period highlights the interplay between strategic intelligence, human relationships, and the moral ambiguities of organized crime. Lefty navigated high-stakes gambling, loan sharking, and complex interpersonal dynamics with a combination of skill, intuition, and emotional acumen. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco exemplified the tension between trust and vulnerability, while his operational oversight reflected a meticulous understanding of both risk and human behavior. Lefty's ability to balance these dimensions allowed him to maintain influence, authority, and respect within the Bonanno family, even as the forces of law enforcement and betrayal advanced upon him. By the late 1980s, Lefty's life had reached a critical intersection of trust, risk, and impending exposure. His mentorship of Donnie, his operational oversight, and his personal code of loyalty had created a life that was both structured and perilous. The foundations of his existence, built on trust, competence, and human connection, were about to be tested in ways that would irrevocably alter the course of his life. The careful equilibrium he maintained, the balance of power, loyalty, and strategy, was entering a phase where every decision and every interaction carried the potential for dramatic consequences. Lefty's story during this period is a vivid portrait of the complexities of organized crime, human trust, and the inescapable consequences of placing faith in others as events moved toward their inevitable confrontation. Lefty Ruggiero's life exemplified the paradox of power and vulnerability. He was a man of considerable influence, capable of strategic brilliance and operational precision, yet dependent upon relationships and trust that could be exploited. His experiences underscore the human dimensions of mafia life, the friendships, the mentorships, the loyalty, and the betrayals that define the delicate interplay between survival, ambition, and morality. Lefty's journey during this time is a testament to the resilience, intelligence, and humanity that persist, even in the most dangerous and morally ambiguous circumstances. By the late 1980s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's life had become a precarious dance between trust, loyalty, and the unforgiving realities of organized crime. Years of service to the Bonanno family had earned him respect and influence. Yet these very achievements carried inherent risks. The mafia world was unforgiving, missteps were punished swiftly, trust was a fragile commodity, and alliances shifted unpredictably. Lefty, seasoned and shrewd, navigated this world with a combination of instinct, experience, and human understanding, yet the pressures of law enforcement, internal family politics, and the ever-present threat of betrayal increasingly defined the boundaries of his existence. Lefty's bond with Donnie Brasco had deepened into one of mutual reliance. Donnie's increasing responsibilities within the family were a testament to Lefty's mentorship and trust. He was involved in high-stakes gambling operations, mediated sensitive disputes, and handled complex financial arrangements, all under Lefty's guidance. Lefty relied on Donnie not only to execute operations but also to provide counsel, perspective, and insight into the dynamics of the family. Their partnership was unique, a blending of professional collaboration, mentorship, and genuine human connection, forged under the high-stakes pressure of a world in which loyalty could not be assumed. For Lefty, this relationship was both a source of reassurance and a rare window into emotional trust, a rarity in the clandestine, dangerous world of organized crime. Yet the environment around Lefty was fraught with danger. Rival factions constantly sought advantage. Disputes could erupt into violence at any moment, and law enforcement efforts had become increasingly sophisticated. Federal agents were patient and methodical, employing covert surveillance, undercover operations, and meticulous intelligence gathering to infiltrate organized crime networks. Every interaction, every financial transaction, every meeting had the potential to trigger scrutiny or compromise. Lefty, aware of these risks, operated with meticulous caution. He relied on observation, intuition, and his understanding of human nature to maintain control, ensure operational security, and mitigate the risk of exposure. Operationally, Lefty had become a master of management and strategic oversight. His gambling rings spanned neighborhoods, requiring constant supervision, precise financial accounting, and careful conflict resolution. Loan sharking operations demanded a delicate balance of intimidation and negotiation to ensure repayment without triggering unnecessary violence. Each transaction and interaction required acute awareness and foresight. Lefty's ability to detect subtle cues, hesitation in speech, a nervous glance, or a shift in demeanor allowed him to anticipate problems before they arose, maintaining operational continuity and preserving his reputation for competence. His leadership style blended authority with personal rapport, ensuring loyalty among associates while maintaining respect and fear where necessary. Despite the constant operational pressures, Lefty maintained connections that grounded him in a semblance of normalcy. He valued family, long-standing friendships, and his Brooklyn neighborhood, where casual interactions provided respite from the dangers of mafia life. These moments of normalcy, shared meals, brief conversations, or simply walking familiar streets, allowed Lefty to reconnect with his roots and reflect on the human dimension of his existence. They reminded him of the values that had shaped him long before he became enmeshed in organized crime, loyalty, trust, and the importance of community. These connections were critical for emotional resilience, offering a counterbalance to constant tension and high stakes of his professional life. Lefty's personal code continued to guide him amidst moral and ethical ambiguity. He was fully aware of the illegality of his actions and the harm they could cause, yet he rationalized them as necessary for survival, influence, and stability within a world defined by power and hierarchy. Discretion, loyalty, and responsibility were the principles that governed his actions. Even in the midst of criminal enterprise, Lefty sought to act with fairness and integrity, managing disputes without unnecessary violence and maintaining relationships built on mutual respect. This code not only facilitated his operational success, but also strengthened his bonds with those he trusted, particularly Donnie Brasco, whose apparent loyalty offered a rare source of reassurance in a world rife with deceit. The mentorship of Donnie Brasco became increasingly critical during this period. Lefty guided him through the complex mechanics of mafia operations, advising on negotiation, dispute resolution, and strategic decision-making. Donnie's competence, diligence, and apparent loyalty provided Lefty with confidence that allowed him to delegate tasks with assurance. Their collaboration was a blend of professional necessity and genuine human trust, fostering a relationship that transcended mere transactional interaction. Lefty confided in Donnie about operational strategy, family dynamics, even personal reflections, sharing insights he would not reveal to others. This partnership became a central pillar of Lefty's life, reinforcing both his professional capabilities and his need for human connection. Within the Bonanno family, Lefty's influence and standing were significant. He was sought out for advice, relied upon to resolve disputes, and trusted to oversee complex operations. This position of authority brought both opportunity and vulnerability. Decisions made under his guidance had far-reaching consequences, influencing financial outcomes, interpersonal dynamics, and the family's standing among rival factions. Lefty's capacity to balance these responsibilities while preserving trust, authority, and operational stability demonstrated his intelligence, experience, and strategic insight. His reputation as a reliable, fair, and competent figure ensured that his judgment was respected and sought after in critical matters. Yet, beneath the surface of operational success, Lefty's life was fraught with hidden danger. The loyalty he cultivated, the very quality he prized most, carried inherent risks. Donnie Brasco's true identity as an undercover agent represented a profound vulnerability that Lefty could not foresee. Every shared secret, operational insight, and moment of trust was an unknowing exposure to the forces arrayed against him. This tension, the intersection of trust and risk, loyalty and vulnerability, defined Lefty's experience, illustrating the delicate balance that characterized life in the mafia. It was a stark reminder that even the most carefully cultivated relationships could harbor unseen threats. Lefty's operational acumen remained critical as the scale and complexity of his responsibilities expanded. Financial oversight, coordination of multiple gambling rings, and management of loan-sharking operations required continuous attention. Each decision, each negotiation, and each calculated risk demanded both intelligence and discretion. Lefty's ability to anticipate problems, mediate conflicts, and maintain control allowed him to navigate an environment of constant uncertainty. His reputation for competence and fairness ensured loyalty and respect among associates, reinforcing the stability of the operations under his oversight. Throughout these challenges, Lefty's reflections on loyalty, trust, and human nature became increasingly central to his understanding of life. He was conscious of the moral ambiguities inherent in his actions, the potential for betrayal, and the precariousness of relying on others. Yet he continued to operate with a sense of purpose, guided by his personal code of discretion, fairness, and loyalty. Lefty's ability to navigate these tensions, to maintain influence and trust, and to preserve a sense of identity amidst danger illustrates the complexities of human relationships in a world dominated by secrecy and risk. By the close of this period, Lefty Ruggiero's life was defined by an intricate interplay of power, trust, and vulnerability. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco, operational expertise, and personal code of loyalty had created a life that was simultaneously successful and perilous. Every choice carried consequences, every interaction had potential implications, and every relationship was a delicate balance of trust and risk. Lefty's story during this period serves as a vivid illustration of the human dimensions of organized crime, the friendships, mentorships, and loyalties that sustain individuals, as well as the betrayals and exposures that ultimately test the foundations of their existence. Lefty's narrative in this chapter exemplifies the duality of power and vulnerability, trust and exposure, loyalty and risk. He was a man capable of operational brilliance and strategic insight, yet dependent on relationships and confidences that could be exploited. His life demonstrates the human complexities behind the facade of control and authority, showing how personal connections, mentorship, and trust are both strengths and potential points of failure. As Lefty continued to navigate this precarious world, the stage was set for events that would profoundly challenge the foundations of his life, testing the very loyalty and trust that he had built over decades. By the late 1980s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's world had become a volatile mixture of loyalty, ambition, and imminent danger. Years of dedication to the Bonanno crime family had earned him respect, influence, and operational control. Yet they had also placed him squarely in the path of the hidden perils that accompanied mafia life. Every interaction carried the weight of potential consequence. Every decision had ramifications extending far beyond the immediate moment. And the delicate fabric of trust that had defined his existence was more fragile than he realized. Lefty's life was a continuous balancing act, maintaining authority, fostering loyalty, and navigating the ever-present threats from law enforcement and unseen betrayal. At the heart of Lefty's operational and emotional life was his partnership with Donnie Brasco. Donnie's integration into the Bonanno family was now complete. He was trusted with sensitive operations, relied upon for critical decision-making, and treated by many as a legitimate member of the inner circle. Lefty's mentorship had been central to this development. He guided Donnie through complex negotiations, provided insight into the intricate hierarchy of the family, and offered counsel on subtle dynamics that could determine success or failure in operation. For Lefty, Donnie was more than an operative. He represented a rare bond of trust and human connection in a world where both were extraordinarily difficult to find. Despite the apparent stability of this relationship, the environment in which Lefty operated was fraught with tension. Rival factions within the Bonanno family and across other mafia families continuously tested boundaries, sought leverage, and plotted expansion. Each neighborhood, each gambling operation, each loan collection was a potential flashpoint for conflict. Lefty's experience and instincts allowed him to anticipate disputes, assess intentions, and intervene before situations escalated into violence. Yet the risk of sudden betrayal by associates, family members, or even those he trusted most remained ever present, demanding constant vigilance and strategic foresight. Operationally, Lefty's responsibilities were vast and complex. He oversaw gambling rings that spanned multiple neighborhoods, each requiring meticulous bookkeeping, collection oversight, and dispute resolution. Loan sharking operations involved negotiating repayment, enforcing agreements, and managing relationships with borrowers, all while maintaining the delicate balance of intimidation and professionalism. Every action required precision, careful planning, and acute awareness of human behavior. Lefty's capacity to anticipate problems, interpret subtle behavioral cues, and make decisions under pressure was unparalleled, enabling him to sustain influence and maintain operational stability even amid constant external pressures. While his professional life was governed by these high-stakes activities, Lefty's personal connections provided a necessary anchor. Time spent with family, friends, and familiar neighborhood acquaintances offered him moments of respite and reflection. These interactions were brief but essential, allowing Lefty to reconnect with the values and human relationships that predated his life in organized crime. They provided perspective, grounding him in a sense of identity beyond his professional role and reminding him of loyalty, community, and trust in their most fundamental forms. In a world dominated by secrecy and danger, these connections were a vital counterbalance. Lefty's personal code continued to guide his actions amidst the moral ambiguities of mafia life. Fully aware of the illegality and potential consequences of his activities, operated with a philosophy emphasizing loyalty, discretion, and responsibility. Even as he enforced the law of the streets, negotiated BEPs, and managed high-stakes operations, Lefty sought to act with fairness and integrity, avoiding unnecessary conflict and maintaining respect among associates. This code not only guided his professional decisions but also reinforced the depth of trust he placed in others, particularly Donnie Brasco, whose apparent loyalty became an emotional and operational cornerstone for Lefty. As Donnie Brasco assumed more responsibility, Lefty's mentorship deepened. He provided guidance on complex operational tasks, advised on the subtle dynamics of mafia relationship, and facilitated Donnie's integration into critical decision-making processes. Their collaboration represented both operational necessity and human connection, creating a partnership in which trust, mentorship, and reliance intertwined. Lefty confided in Donnie in ways he did with few others, sharing insight into strategy, interpersonal dynamics, and even personal reflection. The bond that developed was both a source of reassurance and an unrecognized vulnerability, as the foundation of trust that Lefty had so carefully built was dependent on the hidden motives of another man. Within the Bonanno family, Lefty's influence continued to expand. He was sought for counsel, relied upon to mediate disputes, and entrusted with the management of operations critical to the family's financial stability. This position brought authority but also heightened exposure. Decisions carried consequences that could reverberate through the organization, affecting financial outcomes, personal relationships, and the family's standing among rival factions. Lefty's ability to navigate these pressures relied on a combination of operational intelligence, psychological insight, and strategic foresight. His reputation as a competent and fair operator ensured that his guidance was respected and followed, reinforcing his standing within the organization. Yet even as he navigated this intricate web of power, Lefty was increasingly vulnerable to forces beyond his control. The loyalty he prized and nurtured, particularly in his relationship with Donnie, represented both strength and exposure. Unbeknownst to Lefty, Donnie's true allegiance lay with law enforcement, and every shared operational detail, every confident conversation, was unknowingly compromising his life and career. This tension, the coexistence of trust and risk, reliance and exposure, permeated Lefty's existence, illustrating the fragile balance between human connection and operational security in the high-stakes world of organized crime. Lefty's operational prowess remained central to his survival. He coordinated multiple gambling rings, managed loan-sharking operations, and ensured the smooth flow of financial and personnel logistics. Each task demanded meticulous attention, rapid problem-solving, and the ability to mediate disputes before they escalated. Lefty's experience and intuition allowed him to assess the motives, intentions, and reliability of those around him, enabling him to maintain control even in a dynamic, unpredictable environment. His leadership style blended authority with personal rapport, fostering loyalty while sustaining operational efficiency. Amid these operational and personal challenges, Lefty's reflection on loyalty, trust, and human nature grew increasingly pronounced. He was aware of the moral ambiguity surrounding his actions, the constant threat of betrayal, and the vulnerability inherent in placing trust in others. Yet he continued to operate with purpose, guided by his personal code emphasizing discretion, fairness, and loyalty. Lefty's ability to navigate these tensions, maintain influence, and preserve human connection amid pervasive danger is a central theme in understanding his life and character. As the narrative moved toward the climax of this period, Lefty's life was defined by the intersection of power, trust, and vulnerability. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco, his operational skill, and his personal code of loyalty had created a life both successful and perilous. Every decision carried consequences. Every interaction had potential ramifications, and every relationship was a delicate negotiation of trust and risk. Lefty's story in this chapter illustrates the intricate dynamics of organized crime, revealing the human dimensions of loyalty, mentorship, and the unseen consequences of hidden allegiances. Lefty Ruggiero's life during this time exemplifies the paradox of organized crime, a man with influence and operational brilliance, yet dependent on relationships and trust that could be exploited. His experiences underscore the complexities of human connection in a world dominated by secrecy, power, and danger. As he continued to manage the operations of the Bonanno family and navigate his relationship with Donnie Brasco, the stage was set for events that would test the very foundations of his existence, revealing both the strength and fragility of trust in a world defined by risk and deception. By the turn of the 1990s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's life had reached a state of critical complexity, where trust, loyalty, and risk were in constant tension. Years of service to the Bonanno crime family had elevated him to a position of influence. Yet this status brought both operational authority and exposure to hidden dangers. Every decision carried weight, Every interaction could alter the balance of power within the family or attract the scrutiny of law enforcement. Life had become a calculated exercise in navigation, one that demanded precision, foresight, and an unflinching understanding of human behavior. For Lefty, the stakes had never been higher. Central to Lefty's existence was his relationship with Donnie Brasco, whose integration into the Bonanno family was now complete. Donnie's responsibilities had expanded significantly, encompassing oversight of gambling operations, mediation of internal disputes, and coordination of strategic initiatives. Lefty's mentorship had facilitated this growth, providing guidance on the intricacies of mafia hierarchy, negotiation, and strategic problem-solving. For Lefty, Donnie was not just an operative. He was a confidant and a rare source of trust in a world where loyalty was scarce. Their bond represented both professional necessity and personal connection, a combination that brought comfort, operational efficiency, and a subtle vulnerability. Lefty's operational environment had grown increasingly challenging. Rival factions within the Bonanno family and across other mafia families were competing for territory, influence, and control of lucrative operations. Law enforcement agencies had become more sophisticated in their efforts to infiltrate organized crime, employing wiretaps, undercover agents, and long-term surveillance to gather evidence. Every meeting, transaction, and casual interaction carried the potential for exposure. Lefty relied heavily on his instincts, honed over decades to interpret subtle cues, anticipate problems, and maintain operational security. This vigilance was essential to sustaining influence and avoiding the pitfalls that claimed less cautious members of the mafia. Within this high-stakes environment, Lefty's responsibilities were extensive. He managed gambling rings that stretched across multiple neighborhoods, ensuring accuracy in financial reporting, the proper functioning of operations, and resolution of disputes before they escalated. Loan sharking operations required careful negotiation, strategic application of pressure, and consistent oversight. Collectors, enforcers, and bookkeepers all reported to him, executing operations under his direction. His leadership blended authority with rapport, balancing respect, loyalty, and the practicalities of enforcement. Lefty's ability to sustain this balance was crucial to both operational success and personal safety. Personal connections remained essential to Lefty's sense of stability. Visits with family, interactions with long-standing friends, and casual engagement with his Brooklyn neighborhood offered a stark contrast to the tension and secrecy of mafia life. These moments of normalcy were brief yet critical, allowing reflection and the maintenance of emotional grounding. They reinforced the values that had shaped Lefty long before his involvement with organized crime, loyalty, community, and trust. Even as operational demands escalated, these human connections provided perspective, serving as reminders of a life beyond clandestine activity and criminal enterprise. Lefty's personal code continued to define his approach to life and business. Aware of the illegality and moral ambiguity of his actions, he emphasized loyalty, discretion, and responsibility in all dealings. Disputes were resolved with measured judgment. Operational challenges were addressed with precision and foresight. Even within the inherently violent and morally complex world of the mafia, Lefty sought to act with fairness, maintaining trust among associates and ensuring that power was exercised without unnecessary harm. This approach bolstered his influence, reinforced loyalty, and underpinned the foundation of trust he placed in Donnie Brasco and other key associates. The mentorship of Donnie Brasco remained central to Lefty's life. Donnie's integration into critical operational roles reflected the depth of trust Lefty had invested in him. Lefty provided guidance on financial oversight, operational coordination, and interpersonal dynamics within the family. Donnie's apparent competence and reliability offered reassurance in a world where deception and betrayal were commonplace. Their collaboration was both strategic and personal, a professional partnership grounded in operational necessity but enriched by genuine human trust. Lefty confided in Donnie, sharing insights into organizational strategy, family dynamics, and personal reflection, strengthening a bond that was both a strength and an unrecognized vulnerability. Lefty's influence within the Bonanno family extended beyond operational management. He was often consulted for advice, relied upon to mediate disputes, and entrusted with sensitive information critical to the family's stability. Authority brought opportunity but also heightened risk. Decisions had consequences that reverberated across financial, interpersonal, and strategic spheres. Lefty's ability to navigate these pressures relied on his acute understanding of human behavior, operational intelligence, and strategic foresight. His reputation for competence and fairness reinforced his authority, ensuring that his guidance was respected and followed within the organization. Yet the very qualities that defined Lefty's success, trust, loyalty, and mentorship, also exposed him to danger. Unbeknownst to him, Donnie Brasco was an undercover agent, and every shared detail, operational insight, and moment of trust contributed to a breach that could dismantle both his career and personal security. This hidden reality underscored the fragility inherent in even the most carefully cultivated relationships. The tension between confidence and loyalty and the vulnerability of hidden allegiances defined Lefty's experience, highlighting the precarious balance that underpinned his existence. Operationally, Lefty maintained control through meticulous oversight, strategic decision-making, and a keen understanding of interpersonal dynamics. Gambling operations were monitored closely, loan sharking transactions were managed with precision, and disputes were resolved through a combination of authority, negotiation, and psychological insight. Lefty's ability to anticipate and mitigate risks allowed him to maintain stability in a dynamic environment. His leadership style, blending assertiveness with personal rapport, fostered loyalty and trust, while sustaining operational efficiency, reinforcing his indispensable role within the family. Reflecting on loyalty, trust, and human nature, Lefty became increasingly aware of the moral and existential tensions of his life. He understood the potential consequences of misplaced trust, the ever-present threat of betrayal, and the complex dynamics that governed human relationships in a world dominated by secrecy and risk. Yet he continued to act with purpose, guided by his personal code emphasizing discretion, fairness, and loyalty. His ability to navigate these challenges, maintain influence, and preserve human connection amid danger illustrates the nuanced human dimensions that underlie organized crime. By the early 1990s, Lefty's life was poised at a critical intersection of trust, vulnerability, and operational authority. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco, combined with his operational expertise and personal code of loyalty, created a life that was simultaneously structured and precarious. Every choice carried potential consequences. Every interaction had layers of implication, and every relationship required careful calibration of trust and caution. Lefty's story in this chapter reflects the intricate interplay of human loyalty, ambition, and risk, offering insight into the delicate balance required to navigate a world defined by both opportunity and peril. Lefty Ruggiero's experiences illustrate the paradox of organized crime, a man of considerable influence and operational skill, yet reliant on relationships and trust that could be exploited. His narrative underscores the complexities of human connection, mentorship, and loyalty within an environment defined by secrecy and danger. As he continued to manage operations and cultivate bonds, the trajectory of his life was being shaped by forces that were largely hidden, yet profoundly consequential. Lefty's story in this chapter is both a testament to his strategic intelligence and a foreshadowing of the trials and revelations that would soon challenge the very foundations of his existence. By the early 1990s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's life had become a delicate equilibrium of trust, operational responsibility, and constant vigilance. His decades-long involvement with the Bonanno crime family had established him as a figure of influence, respect, and authority, yet it had also placed him in a position of extreme vulnerability. Every decision carried consequences that could ripple through the organization. Every relationship required careful calibration, and every action held the potential to attract law enforcement scrutiny. Lefty's world was one where power and peril coexisted, and navigating this duality demanded both acute intelligence and profound emotional resilience. Central to Lefty's life at this point was his relationship with Donnie Brasco. Donnie had become a fully integrated member of the Bonanno family, entrusted with significant responsibilities that ranged from managing gambling operations to mediating internal disputes. Lefty's mentorship had been crucial to Donnie's development, providing him with insight into the mafia, intricate hierarchy, operational strategies, and the subtle dynamics of loyalty and influence. For Lefty, Donnie was more than an associate. He represented a rare instance of trust and reliability in a world where betrayal could be fatal. Their relationship was a blend of professional necessity and personal connection, offering Lefty both operational efficiency and a rare measure of emotional support. The environment in which Lefty operated remained fraught with danger. Rival families and internal factions were constantly vying for territory, power, and influence. Law enforcement agencies had intensified their focus on organized crime, employing sophisticated surveillance, undercover agents, and long-term investigations to gather actionable intelligence. In this context, every conversation, every financial transaction, and every meeting could expose vulnerabilities. Lefty's experience and intuition were invaluable in navigating these pressures. He had developed the ability to read subtle behavioral cues, anticipate disputes before they escalated, and manage relationships with both authority and discretion. This vigilance allowed him to maintain control over operations while minimizing risk. Lefty's operational responsibilities had grown increasingly complex. He supervised gambling rings that spanned multiple neighborhoods, requiring precise financial oversight, enforcement of rules, and resolution of conflicts. Loan sharking activities demanded strategic application of pressure, careful monitoring of repayment, and management of collectors and enforcers. Lefty's leadership style combined authority with personal rapport, ensuring that associates remained loyal while operations remained efficient and secure. His ability to balance these demands was a testament to both his strategic intelligence and his understanding of human nature. Personal relationships continued to provide Lefty with grounding amid the high-pressure world of organized crime. Time spent with family, friends, and the Brooklyn community offered moments of respite and perspective. These interactions reminded him of the values that had shaped him long before he became entrenched in the mafia: loyalty, trust, and the importance of human connection. While these moments were brief, they were essential to maintaining emotional resilience and clarity of judgment, allowing Lefty to navigate the complexities of his professional life with a sense of purpose and integrity. Lefty's personal code guided his actions in both operational and moral contexts. He understood the illegality of his activities and the potential consequences for himself and others. Yet he approached his work with a commitment to loyalty, discretion, and responsibility. Disputes were resolved carefully to avoid unnecessary violence, and operations were managed with a focus on fairness and efficiency. This adherence to a personal ethical framework reinforced his credibility, strengthened trust among associates, and allowed him to operate effectively within the complex hierarchy of the Bonanno family. His guidance and mentorship, particularly of Donnie Brasco, reflected this balance of pragmatism and principle. Donnie Brasco's increasing responsibilities highlighted both the depth of Lefty's trust and the operational reliance the family placed on him. Lefty guided Donnie through the nuances of financial oversight, organization, decision-making, and interpersonal dynamics within the family. Donnie's competence and apparent loyalty provided reassurance, allowing Lefty to delegate critical tasks and focus on broader strategic oversight. The relationship between Lefty and Donnie exemplified the delicate balance of trust, mentorship, and operational necessity, creating a partnership that was both effective and uniquely personal. Yet this bond also introduced profound risk, as Donnie's true identity as an undercover agent represented a vulnerability that Lefty could not foresee. Within the Bonanno family, Lefty's influence extended beyond operational oversight. He was frequently consulted for strategic decisions, relied upon to resolve disputes, and entrusted with sensitive information critical to the family's success. Authority brought opportunity, but it also brought heightened exposure. Every decision carried consequences that could impact financial outcomes, relationships, and the family's reputation. Lefty's ability to navigate these responsibilities relied on a combination of operational skill, psychological insight, and strategic foresight. His reputation for fairness, competence, and discretion ensured that his guidance was respected and followed, reinforcing his position within the organization. Even as Lefty maintained control over operations, the threat of betrayal loomed over him. The very qualities that made him successful, trust, mentorship, and relational intelligence, also exposed him to hidden dangers. Every detail shared with Donnie Brasco, every confidence expressed, was unknowingly contributing to an eventual unraveling of his world. This tension, the coexistence of loyalty and vulnerability, reliance, and exposure defined Lefty's existence, highlighting the fragile equilibrium that structured both his personal and professional life. Operationally, Lefty remained meticulous and strategic. Gambling operations were closely monitored, loan sharking transactions were executed with precision, and disputes were resolved through a combination of negotiation, psychological insight, and measured authority. His leadership fostered loyalty and efficiency, reinforcing his indispensability within the family. Lefty's ability to anticipate challenges, mediate conflict, and sustain operational continuity exemplified the blend of intelligence, experience, and human understanding that defined his career. As he reflected on his life, Lefty became increasingly conscious of the moral complexities surrounding his actions. He understood the consequences of misplaced trust, the potential for betrayal, and the subtle dynamics that governed relationships within organized crime. Yet he continued to operate with purpose, guided by principles emphasizing discretion, fairness, and loyalty. His ability to navigate these challenges, maintain influence, and preserve meaningful human connection amidst pervasive risk illustrated the profound tension that defined his existence. By the early 1990s, Lefty Ruggiero's life had reached a critical juncture. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco, operational expertise, and personal code of loyalty created a life that was both effective and precarious. Every decision carried weight, every interaction held the potential for revelation, and every relationship required careful judgment. Lefty's story in this chapter reflects the intricate interplay of loyalty, risk, and human connection, offering insight into the complexities of life within the mafia. Lefty Ruggiero's experiences underscore the paradox of power and vulnerability. He was a man of considerable influence, capable of operational brilliance and strategic foresight, yet reliant on relationships and trust that could be exploited. His narrative illustrates the human dimensions of organized crime, the friendships, mentorships, and bonds that sustain individuals, as well as the betrayals and exposures that ultimately test the foundations of their existence. As Lefty continued to navigate the high-stakes world of the Bonanno family and cultivate his partnership with Donnie Brasco, the stage was being set for revelations and consequences that would profoundly alter his life, testing the limits of trust, loyalty, and resilience. By the early 1990s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's life had become an intricate web of operations, loyalty, and unseen dangers, where every relationship and decision carried weight beyond immediate comprehension. Years of immersion in the Bonanno crime family had given him a position of influence, yet the very skills and trust that defined his success also exposed him to profound vulnerability. Lefty's world was one of constant calculation, where operational oversight, human intuition, and moral judgment intertwined in a delicate balance. Each day demanded vigilance, foresight, and an understanding that one misstep could have cascading consequences for both him and those he cared about. Lefty's bond with Donnie Brasco remained the central axis of his professional and personal life. Donnie had become a trusted and competent figure within the family, entrusted with responsibility that extended across gambling operations, debt collections, and the mediation of internal disputes. Lefty's mentorship had guided him through the nuanced hierarchy of the mafia, teaching him to read people, navigate complex relationships, and anticipate challenges before they became unmanageable. For Lefty, Donnie represented not just a colleague but a rare, deeply valued confidant. Their partnership combined operational efficiency with human connection, offering reassurance, stability, and the illusion of safety in a world rife with risk. Despite the apparent reliability of this relationship, Lefty's environment was laden with tension. Rival factions within the Bonanno family, along with other mafia families, constantly sought opportunities to expand influence, exploit weaknesses, and seize territory. Law enforcement had intensified its efforts to infiltrate organized crime, utilizing sophisticated surveillance techniques, undercover operations, and long-term investigations to collect evidence. Every meeting, conversation, and financial transaction carried a latent risk of exposure. Lefty's experience and intuition enabled him to detect subtle behavioral cues, anticipate disputes, and act decisively to preserve both operational security and personal safety. This vigilance was essential in sustaining his influence while minimizing the threat of catastrophic missteps. Operationally, Lefty was responsible for a complex array of activities. Gambling operations required careful oversight of finances, enforcement of rules, and resolution of conflicts to maintain smooth functioning. Loan sharking involved strategic application of pressure, monitoring repayment schedules, and managing collectors and enforcers who operated under his direction. His leadership combined authority with personal rapport, fostering loyalty among associates while ensuring operational efficiency. Lefty's ability to balance these demands reflected not only his intelligence but also his deep understanding of human behavior, trust, and the social dynamics of organized crime. Even amidst the pressures of his professional life, Lefty maintained personal connections that provided grounding and perspective. Time with family, old friends, and his Brooklyn neighborhood offered moments of normalcy, providing a buffer against the constant tension of mafia life. These interactions reinforced the values that had long shaped him: loyalty, trust, and the significance of human connection. While these moments were fleeting, they were vital in helping Lefty sustain emotional resilience and maintain clarity of judgment, allowing him to navigate the complex interplay of power, trust, and danger inherent in his profession. Lefty's personal code remained central to his approach to life and work. Fully aware of the illegality and potential consequences of his activity, he emphasized loyalty, discretion, and responsibility in every action. Disputes were resolved with fairness and strategic insight, and operations were managed to maintain stability and respect. This ethical framework reinforced his credibility and strengthened trust among associates. His guidance, particularly in mentoring Donnie Brasco, exemplified this balance between pragmatism and principle, allowing him to cultivate competence, loyalty, and operational stability within the family. Donnie Brasco's increasing responsibilities highlighted the depth of trust that Lefty had invested in him. Lefty instructed him on financial management, organizational strategy, and interpersonal negotiation, guiding him through decisions that shaped both operations and family dynamics. Donnie's apparent loyalty and capability offered Lefty a measure of reassurance, allowing him to delegate important responsibilities with confidence. Their partnership was both professional and deeply human, blending operational necessity with mentorship and trust. Yet this bond also contained latent danger, as Donnie's hidden identity as an undercover agent threatened the foundation of trust upon which Lefty relied. Within the Bonanno family, Lefty's influence extended beyond operational execution. He was consulted for strategic decisions, entrusted with sensitive information, and relied upon to maintain stability within the organization. Authority brought both opportunity and risk. Every choice carried consequences that could affect the financial health, relationships, and reputation of the family. Lefty's capacity to navigate these pressures rested on his operational intelligence, psychological insight, and strategic foresight. His reputation for fairness and competence reinforced his position, ensuring that his advice and decisions were respected and implemented across multiple tiers of the organization. The paradox of trust and vulnerability was a constant undercurrent in Lefty's life. The qualities that defined him, loyalty, mentorship, and relational intelligence, also created exposure. Every conversation, operational detail, and expression of confidence with Donnie Brasco unwittingly contributed to the risk that would eventually destabilize his life. This tension between reliance and exposure was an inescapable feature of his existence, highlighting the fragile nature of human trust within the clandestine, high-stakes world of organized crime. Lefty's operational oversight continued to require meticulous attention and strategic thinking. He monitored gambling operations, managed loan sharking transactions, and resolved disputes through a combination of negotiation, psychological insight, and measured authority. His leadership fostered loyalty and operational efficiency, reinforcing his indispensability within the family. Lefty's foresight, intuition, and experience allowed him to anticipate challenges, prevent crises, and maintain continuity in an environment defined by volatility and risk. As Lefty reflected on his life, he became increasingly aware of the moral and existential complexities surrounding his decisions. He recognized the consequences of misplaced trust, a constant threat of betrayal, and the intricate interplay of human relationships within organized crime. Yet he continued to operate with purpose, guided by a code of discretion, fairness, and loyalty. His ability to sustain influence, navigate risk, and preserve meaningful connections amid pervasive danger, illustrated the delicate balance that defined his existence. By the early 1990s, Lefty Ruggiero's life had reached a critical juncture. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco, operational acumen and personal code of loyalty created a life that was both successful and precarious. Every interaction carried potential consequences, every decision had strategic implications, and every relationship demanded careful judgment. Lefty's story in this chapter reflects the intricate balance of loyalty, risk, and human connection, offering insight into the complexities of life within the mafia. Lefty's experiences during this period underscore the paradox of organized crime, a man of operational brilliance and influence, yet dependent on relationships and trust that could be exploited. His narrative illuminates the human dimensions of loyalty, mentorship, and the unforeseen consequences of hidden allegiances. As Lefty continued to navigate the high-stakes world of the Bonanno family and maintain his partnership with Donnie Brasco, the stage was being set for events that would profoundly challenge the very foundations of his existence, testing the limits of trust, loyalty, and resilience. By the early 1990s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's existence had become a precarious dance between loyalty, operational responsibility, and the omnipresent threat of betrayal. Years of commitment to the Bonanno crime family had secured him respect, influence, and authority, yet the very traits that enabled his success, trust, mentorship, and strategic insight, also rendered him vulnerable. Life had become a careful balancing act, requiring constant calculation, acute observation, and a profound understanding of human behavior. Every decision carried weight, every relationship demanded scrutiny, and every could have repercussions that extended far beyond the immediate moment. For Lefty, the stakes had never been higher. Central to Lefty's life was his relationship with Donnie Brasco, whose integration into the Bonanno family had reached a level of near-total trust. Donnie's responsibilities spanned gambling operations, loan sharking, and mediation of internal disputes. Lefty's mentorship had guided him through the complex hierarchy of the mafia, teaching him to read subtle cues, navigate interpersonal dynamics, and anticipate challenges before they escalated. Donnie was more than an operative to Lefty. He was a confidant and a rare source of loyalty in a world where trust was fleeting. Their partnership was both practical and deeply personal, offering operational efficiency alongside the emotional reassurance of a trusted ally. Yet this trust carried hidden vulnerability, as Donnie's true identity as an undercover agent would eventually reveal. The environment surrounding Lefty remained fraught with danger. Rival factions within the Bonanno family, along with other mafia families, continuously sought to expand influence and seize territory. Law enforcement efforts had intensified, with sophisticated surveillance, undercover agents, and long-term investigations designed to penetrate organized crime networks. Every transaction, meeting, and casual conversation carried latent risk. Lefty relied on decades of experience, sharp intuition, and meticulous observation to navigate this environment. He was adept at detecting subtle behavioral shifts, anticipating conflicts, and acting decisively to maintain both operational security and personal safety. This vigilance was essential to sustaining his authority and avoiding pitfalls that had claimed less cautious associates. Operationally, Lefty managed a complex web of activities. Gambling operations demanded precise oversight, accurate financial accounting, and conflict resolution to ensure continuity. Loan sharking involved a combination of strategic negotiation, measured pressure, and careful management of collectors and enforcers. Lefty's leadership style blended authority with personal rapport, fostering loyalty while maintaining operational efficiency. His ability to balance these demands was rooted in both intellect and emotional intelligence, allowing him to navigate the human dynamics that underpinned every operation. Amid these professional demands, Lefty's personal connections remained crucial. Time spent with family, friends, and members of his Brooklyn neighborhood offered him moments of normalcy, reflection, and grounding. These interactions reminded him of the values that had shaped him long before his life in organized crime, loyalty, trust, and the importance of human connection. Even brief exchanges provided emotional reinforcement, helping Lefty sustain clarity, resilience, and perspective amid the tension and danger that defined his world. Lefty's personal code guided every decision he made. Fully aware of the illegality of his activities, he nonetheless operated with a strict emphasis on loyalty, discretion, and responsibility. Disputes were resolved thoughtfully to avoid unnecessary violence, and operations were managed with fairness and precision. This code reinforced his credibility and ensured trust among associates. In mentoring Donnie Brasco, Lefty combined practical instruction with personal guidance, cultivating both operational competence and relational loyalty, demonstrating the nuanced balance between pragmatism and principle that defined his leadership. Donnie Brasco's growing responsibilities underscored the depth of trust Lefty had placed in him. He was guided in complex financial and operational decisions, exposed to strategic information, and involved in the inner workings of the family hierarchy. Donnie's apparent competence provided reassurance, allowing Lefty to delegate critical responsibilities with confidence. Their partnership exemplified a rare blend of professional necessity and personal trust, creating a bond that was both effective and profoundly human. Yet this bond contained latent risk, as Donnie's hidden identity as an undercover agent introduced a vulnerability that Lefty could not anticipate. Within the Bonanno family, Lefty's influence extended beyond direct operations. He was consulted on strategic decisions, entrusted with sensitive information, and relied upon to maintain organizational stability. Authority brought opportunity but also heightened exposure. Every decision carried potential consequences affecting the family's finances, internal dynamics, and reputation among rival factions. Lefty's ability to navigate these pressures rested on his operational intelligence, psychological insight, and strategic foresight. His reputation for fairness, discretion, and competence reinforced his position, ensuring that his guidance was respected across the organization. The tension between trust and vulnerability was ever present. The qualities that defined Lefty's success, loyalty, mentorship, and relational intelligence also exposed him to unseen threats. Each shared secret, an operational detail, an expression of confidence with Donnie Brasco contributed unknowingly to a fragile web of potential compromise. This dynamic exemplified the precarious nature of trust in the mafia, highlighting how reliant on human connections, no matter how carefully cultivated, could carry profound risks. Lefty's operational acumen remained critical to his survival. He oversaw gambling operations, managed loan sharking transactions, and mediated dispute. With a combination of authority, negotiation, and psychological insight, his leadership fostered loyalty and efficiency, sustaining the family's operations under his watch. Lefty's foresight, intuition, and experience allowed him to anticipate challenges, prevent crises, and maintain stability in an environment defined by volatility and unpredictability. Reflection on his life and choices became increasingly significant. Lefty recognized the moral complexity of his existence, the constant danger of misplaced trust, and the intricate interplay of loyalty, human behavior, and consequence. Yet he continued to act with purpose, guided by his principles of discretion, fairness, and loyalty. His ability to navigate these challenges, preserve influence, and maintain meaningful human connections amidst pervasive risk illustrated the delicate equilibrium that structured both his professional and personal life. By the early 1990s, Lefty Ruggiero's life had reached a pivotal point. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco, operational skill, and personal code of ethics had created a life that was simultaneously structured and vulnerable. Every decision carried weight, every interaction held latent risk, and every relationship required careful management of trust and loyalty. Lefty's story during this period highlights the intricate dynamics of organized crime, illustrating the delicate balance between power, human connection, and the ever-present threat of exposure. Lefty's experiences underscore the paradox of influence and vulnerability. He was a man of operational brilliance, strategic insight, and respected authority, yet dependent on relationships and confidences that could be exploited. His narrative illuminates the human dimensions of loyalty, mentorship, and hidden danger, revealing how trust can simultaneously empower and imperil those who wield it. As Lefty continued to navigate the high-stakes world of the Bonanno family and maintain his bond with Donnie Brasco, the stage was being set for events that would irrevocably challenge the foundations of his life, testing the limits of trust, loyalty, and resilience. By the early 1990s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's life had become a complex mixture of influence, operational oversight, and unseen peril. Years of commitment to the Bonanno crime family had elevated him to a position of authority, yet this status brought inherent vulnerability. The very qualities that had defined his success, trust, mentorship, and strategic foresight were now potential liabilities. Lefty's existence was a continuous exercise in calculated risk, requiring acute awareness, shrewd judgment, and an unrelenting understanding of human behavior. Each decision held consequences. Every relationship carried the weight of potential exposure, and the constant threat of law enforcement scrutiny lingered just beneath the surface. At the center of Lefty's professional and personal life was his bond with Donnie Brasco. Donnie had earned the trust of the Bonanno family and had become deeply integrated into the organization. Lefty's mentorship had been instrumental in this development, guiding him through the intricate hierarchy of mafia operations, teaching him to read human behavior, and preparing him to navigate the subtleties of influence, negotiation, and loyalty. For Lefty, Donnie was more than a trusted operative. He represented a rare instance of loyalty and reliability in a world where betrayal was commonplace. Their partnership was both practical and deeply human, providing operational efficiency alongside a sense of personal reassurance. Yet this trust carried hidden vulnerability, as Donnie's covert identity as an undercover agent loomed as an unseen threat. The environment in which Lefty operated was increasingly volatile. Rival factions within the Bonanno family and competing mafia organizations were constantly testing boundaries, seeking opportunities to expand influence and exploit weaknesses. Law enforcement efforts were relentless, employing surveillance, undercover agents, and long-term investigations designed to penetrate organized crime. Every conversation, transaction, and meeting could expose vulnerabilities. Lefty relied on intuition, experience, and meticulous observation to navigate this treacherous landscape. He could detect subtle cues, hesitations, changes in tone, shifts in body language that signaled potential threats or challenges. This vigilance allowed him to maintain authority and operational control while minimizing exposure. Lefty's operational responsibilities were extensive and complex. He oversaw gambling operations across multiple neighborhoods, ensuring proper financial management, enforcing rules, and resolving disputes before they escalated into violence. Loan sharking operations demanded careful monitoring, strategic negotiation, and supervision of collectors and enforcers. His leadership combined authority with personal rapport, inspiring loyalty and respect while ensuring operational efficiency. Lefty's ability to balance these demands reflected both his strategic intelligence and his deep understanding of the human dynamics that govern mafia life. Despite the constant pressure of his professional life, Lefty maintained personal connections that offered grounding and perspective. Interactions with family, longtime friends, and his Brooklyn neighborhood provided brief moments of normalcy and reflection. These connections reminded him of the values that had shaped him before. His life in organized crime, loyalty, community, and trust. Even fleeting moments of ordinary life reinforced emotional resilience, allowing Lefty to navigate the complexities of power, danger, and loyalty with clarity and balance. Lefty's personal code guided his actions in both moral and operational contexts. Fully aware of the illegality and consequences of his activities, he emphasized loyalty, discretion, and responsibility in every decision. Disputes were resolved thoughtfully to avoid unnecessary violence, and operations were conducted with fairness and strategic insight. This code strengthened trust among associates and reinforced his credibility. In mentoring Donnie Brasco, Lefty combined practical instruction with personal guidance, cultivating both operational competence and relational loyalty. His leadership demonstrated the delicate balance between pragmatic necessity and principled decision-making that defined his career. Donnie Brasco's expanding responsibilities highlighted the depth of trust Lefty had placed in him. Lefty guided him through complex operational decisions, financial oversight, and interpersonal negotiation within the family. Donnie's apparent loyalty and skill offered reassurance, allowing Lefty to delegate significant responsibilities with confidence. Their partnership was a rare blend of operational necessity and personal trust, providing both efficiency and human connection. Yet this bond contained a latent risk. Donnie's hidden identity as an undercover agent posed a profound and unforeseeable threat to Lefty's life and career. Within the Bonanno family, Lefty's influence extended beyond direct operation. He was consulted for strategic decisions, entrusted with sensitive information, and relied upon to maintain organizational stability. Authority brought opportunity but also heightened risk. Every choice carried potential consequences for the family's finances, internal dynamics, and reputation among rival factions. Lefty's ability to navigate these pressures relied on operational acumen, psychological insight, and foresight. His reputation for competence and fairness reinforced his authority, ensuring that his guidance was respected and implemented throughout the organization. The tension between trust and vulnerability was a constant undercurrent in Lefty's life. The qualities that defined his success, loyalty, mentorship, and relational intelligence also exposed him to unseen threats. Every shared confidence, operational detail, and moment of trust with Donnie Brasco contributed unknowingly to the risk that would eventually unravel his world. This tension highlighted the precarious nature of trust within the mafia, showing how human relationships could simultaneously empower and endanger those who relied on them. Lefty's operational mastery remained central to his survival. He closely monitored gambling operations, supervised loan sharking, and resolved disputes with precision, combining negotiation, authority, and insight into human behavior. His leadership fostered loyalty and efficiency, maintaining continuity across complex operations. Lefty's foresight, intuition, and experience allowed him to anticipate challenges, prevent crises, and sustain stability in an environment defined by volatility and unpredictability. As Lefty reflected on his life, he grew increasingly aware of the moral and existential complexities surrounding his choices. He understood the consequences of misplaced trust, the ever-present threat of betrayal, and the intricate dynamics of human relationships within organized crime. Yet he continued to act with purpose, guided by his principles of discretion, fairness, and loyalty. His ability to maintain influence, navigate risk, and preserve meaningful connections amidst pervasive danger illustrated the delicate balance that defined his professional and personal life. By the early 1990s, Lefty Ruggiero's life had reached a critical turning point. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco, operational skill, and personal code of loyalty created a life that was both structured and precarious. Every decision carried weight, every interaction held latent consequences, and every relationship required careful management of trust and loyalty. Lefty's story during this period reflects the intricate interplay of loyalty, risk, and human connection, offering insight into the complex realities of life within the mafia. Lefty's experiences highlight the paradox of influence and vulnerability. He was a man of operational brilliance and strategic insight, yet reliant on relationships and confidences that could be exploited. His narrative illuminates the human dimensions of loyalty, mentorship, and hidden danger, demonstrating how trust could simultaneously empower and imperil those who wielded it. As Lefty continued to navigate the high-stakes world of the Bonanno family and maintain his partnership with Donnie Brasco, the stage was being set for revelations and consequences that would profoundly challenge the very foundations of his existence, testing the limits of trust, loyalty, and resilience. By the mid-1990s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's life had become an intricate dance between authority, loyalty, and an ever-present undercurrent of danger. Decades of service to the Bonanno crime family had earned him respect, influence, and operational control, yet these same attributes made him highly vulnerable. His world was defined by a constant negotiation between trust and risk, every interaction a potential pivot point that could shape the trajectory of his career and his personal safety. In a world ruled by secrecy, influence, and hidden agendas, Lefty had to exercise acute judgment, emotional intelligence, and strategic foresight at every turn. Central to his life was the relationship he had cultivated with Donnie Brasco. Over the years, Donnie had become a trusted and fully integrated member of the Bonanno family. His responsibilities ranged from gambling operations to loan sharking oversight, and from mediation of internal disputes to operational coordination and high-stakes negotiations. Lefty had guided him through the nuanced hierarchy of the mafia, teaching him how to interpret behavioral cues, anticipate conflicts, and navigate the subtle dynamics of loyalty and power. For Lefty, Donnie represented not only a professional ally but also a rare human connection, grounded in trust, something that was exceedingly rare in the treacherous world he inhabited. Their bond was both practical and personal, a combination that offered operational efficiency while providing Lefty a rare measure of reassurance in the midst of constant risk. Despite the apparent reliability of this relationship, the environment around Lefty was increasingly volatile. Rival factions within the Bonanno family, as well as competing mafia organizations, were constantly seeking opportunities to expand influence, seize territory, and exploit weaknesses. Meanwhile, law enforcement had intensified its scrutiny, employing long-term undercover operations, wiretaps, and surveillance to infiltrate the mafia's inner circles. Every conversation, every financial transaction, every seemingly innocuous meeting had the potential to expose vulnerabilities. Lefty relied heavily on intuition, experience, and meticulous observation to navigate this landscape, reading subtle gestures, interpreting shifts in tone, and anticipating potential challenges before they became unmanageable. This constant vigilance was central to maintaining his authority, safeguarding operations, and protecting his own life. Operationally, Lefty's responsibilities were immense and multifaceted. He oversaw gambling operations across multiple neighborhoods, ensuring accurate accounting enforcement of internal rules and the resolution of disputes before they escalated into violence. Loan sharking operations demanded precision, strategic application of pressure, and oversight of enforcers and collectors who carried out day-to-day operations. His leadership style blended authority with personal rapport, cultivate loyalty and respect, while maintaining operational efficiency. Lefty's ability to balance these operational demands with the psychological and relational aspects of the organization highlighted his unique combination of intelligence, experience, and emotional acuity. Even amidst the pressures of his professional life, Lefty maintained personal connections that provided emotional grounding and perspective. Time spent with family, old friends, and his Brooklyn community offered fleeting but crucial moments of normalcy, allowing him to reconnect with the values that had defined him before his life in organized crime. Loyalty, trust, and community were principles that underpinned these interactions, reminding Lefty that despite the complexity and danger of his world, there remained a human dimension that could not be ignored. These moments of respite reinforced his emotional resilience, allowing him to navigate operational challenges with clarity and composure. Lefty's personal code continued to define his approach to life and work. Fully aware of the illegality and moral complexity of his activities, he operated with an unwavering emphasis on loyalty, discretion, and responsibility. Disputes were addressed thoughtfully to avoid unnecessary conflict. Operations were executed with fairness and strategic oversight, and his reputation for integrity within the context of mafia operations was meticulously maintained. In mentoring Donnie Brasco, Lefty balanced practical instruction with personal guidance, nurturing both operational competence and relational trust. This dual approach illustrated his capacity to combine pragmatism with principle, a hallmark of his leadership style. Donnie Brasco's growing prominence within the family underscored the depth of trust that Lefty had invested in him. Lefty guided him through complex financial management, operational strategy, and the delicate interpersonal negotiations that shaped the hierarchy and cohesion of the organization. Donnie's competence and apparent loyalty gave Lefty a measure of confidence, allowing him to delegate responsibilities that had once required his direct oversight. Their partnership exemplified a unique fusion of operational necessity and personal trust, providing both efficiency and emotional support. Yet this relationship also contained latent peril, as Donnie's undercover status meant every operational detail shared would eventually contribute to a profound breach of trust within the Bonanno family. Lefty's influence extended well beyond operational oversight. He was frequently consulted for strategic decision-making, entrusted with sensitive information, and relied upon to maintain organizational cohesion. Authority brought opportunity but also exposure. Every choice carried potential consequences affecting finances, internal relations, and the family's reputation among rivals. Lefty's ability to navigate these pressures relied on operational acumen, psychological insight, and long-term foresight. His credibility, fairness, and competence reinforced his authority, ensuring that his guidance was respected and implemented throughout the organization. The tension between trust and vulnerability remained a constant presence in Lefty's life. The very qualities that enabled his success, loyalty, mentorship, relational intelligence, also exposed him to hidden dangers. Every conversation, every operational detail, and every demonstration of confidence, with Donnie Brasco unknowingly contributed to a fragile web of potential compromise. This dynamic exemplified the inherent fragility of trust within organized crime, illustrating how relationships that empower can also endanger. Lefty's operational mastery remained central to his survival. He carefully monitored gambling operations, oversaw loan sharking transactions, and mediated disputes using a combination of authority, negotiation, and insight into human behavior. His leadership maintained loyalty and efficiency across operations, sustaining the family's activities in a volatile environment. Lefty's foresight, intuition, and accumulated experience allowed him to anticipate challenges, prevent crises, and maintain continuity, even under intense pressure. Reflection on his life and choices became increasingly important. Lefty was acutely aware of the moral ambiguities of his existence, the consequences of misplaced trust, and the delicate interplay of loyalty, human behavior, and operational necessity. Yet he continued to act with purpose, guided by principles of discretion, fairness, and loyalty. His ability to sustain influence, navigate risk, and maintain meaningful human connections amidst pervasive danger exemplified the delicate equilibrium that defined both his personal and professional life. By the mid-1990s, Lefty Ruggiero's life had reached a critical juncture. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco, operational expertise, and adherence to a personal code of ethics created a life that was simultaneously structured and precarious. Every decision carried weight. Every interaction held potential consequence, and every relationship required careful management of trust and loyalty. Lefty's story during this period highlights the intricate interplay of power, risk, and human connection, offering insight into the complex realities of life within the mafia. Lefty's experiences underscore the paradox of influence and vulnerability. He was a man of operational brilliance and strategic foresight, yet dependent on relationships and confidences that could be exploited. His narrative illuminates the human dimensions of loyalty, mentorship, and hidden danger, revealing how trust could simultaneously empower and imperil those who wielded it. As Lefty continued to navigate the high-stakes world of the Bonanno family and maintain his bond with Donnie Brasco, the stage was being set for revelation and consequences that would profoundly challenge the foundations of his existence, testing the limits of trust, loyalty, and resilience. By the mid-1990s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's world had become a complex labyrinth of influence, operational responsibility, and constant vigilance. Years of unwavering loyalty to the Bonanno crime family had secured him a position of authority, respect, and influence, yet these very qualities also left him exposed to profound risks. Lefty's life was a delicate balance, where each decision carried significant consequences. Every interaction demanded scrutiny, and the ever-present threat of law enforcement or betrayal loomed in the shadows. The stakes of survival were higher than ever, and the boundaries between trust and vulnerability had never been more fragile. At the heart of Lefty's existence remained his relationship with Donnie Brasco. Over time, Donnie had become an integral member of the Bonanno family, entrusted with a range of responsibility that included gambling operations, loan sharking oversight, and conflict resolution within the family. Lefty had guided him through the complex hierarchy, teaching him the subtle dynamics of loyalty, strategy, and influence, while also imparting insights into the human behavior that governed mafia interactions. Donnie was more than a capable associate, he was a trusted confidant. Their partnership combined operational efficiency with personal connection, offering Lefty reassurance in a world where trust was rare and betrayal could be lethal. Yet beneath this veneer of trust lay an invisible vulnerability, as Donnie undercover identity threatened to upend everything Lefty had built. The operational environment remained volatile and unforgiving. Rival factions within the Bonanno family, as well as competing mafia organizations, were constantly vying for power, influence, and lucrative operations. Meanwhile, law enforcement agencies had intensified their focus on organized crime, employing long-term surveillance, undercover agents, and sophisticated investigative techniques to infiltrate criminal networks. Every meeting, conversation, and financial transaction had the potential to expose vulnerabilities. Lefty relied on a combination of intuition, experience, and meticulous observation to detect subtle cues, anticipate conflicts, and make decisions that would safeguard both operations and personal security. Lefty's operational responsibilities were extensive and multifaceted. He oversaw gambling operations across multiple neighborhoods, ensuring accurate accounting, enforcement of operational rules, and resolution of disputes before they escalated into violence. Loan sharking demanded careful supervision, strategic negotiation, and oversight of enforcers and collectors. Lefty's leadership blended authority with personal rapport, cultivating loyalty while maintaining operational efficiency. His ability to navigate these complex dynamics highlighted not only his intelligence and experience, but also a deep understanding of human nature, interpersonal relationships, and the social structures that underpin the mafia's power. Amid the pressures of his criminal life, Lefty maintained personal connections that provided stability and emotional grounding. Time spent with family, friends, and the Brooklyn neighborhood offered moments of normalcy, reflection, and human connection. These interactions reminded him of the values that had defined him before his life in organized crime: loyalty, community, and trust. Even fleeting glimpses of ordinary life reinforced his emotional resilience, allowing him to approach operational challenges with clarity, composure, and a sense of purpose. Lefty's personal code of conduct continued to guide his actions. Fully aware of the illegality and moral complexity of his activities, he emphasized loyalty, discretion, and responsibility in every aspect of his life. Conflicts were addressed with thoughtful negotiation to minimize violence, and operations were managed with fairness and strategic insight. This ethical framework bolstered his credibility and strengthened trust among his associates. In mentoring Donnie Brasco, Lefty combined practical operational instruction with personal guidance, cultivating not only skills and competence but also relational loyalty. This blend of pragmatism and principle became a hallmark of his leadership style, ensuring both the functionality and the cohesion of the organization under his influence. Donnie Brasco's increasing involvement in family operations underscored the depth of trust Lefty had placed in him. Lefty guided Donnie through complex financial oversight, operational strategy, and delicate interpersonal negotiations that impacted the family's hierarchy and cohesion. Donnie's apparent reliability allowed Lefty to delegate responsibilities that had previously required his direct attention, fostering efficiency while deepening their bond. Their partnership was an unusual mixture of operational necessity and personal trust, offering reassurance and strategic advantage. Yet, unbeknownst to Lefty, this bond also contained the seeds of vulnerability that would ultimately threaten his livelihood and freedom. Within the Bonanno family, Lefty's influence extended far beyond day-to-day operation. He was consulted on strategic decisions, entrusted with sensitive information, and relied upon to maintain stability within the organization. Authority brought opportunity but also amplified exposure. Each decision carried consequences that could affect finances, internal dynamics, and the family's reputation among rival factions. Lefty navigated these pressures with operational intelligence, psychological insight, and strategic foresight. His reputation for competence, discretion, and fairness reinforced his authority and ensured that his guidance was respected and implemented across multiple levels of the organization. The tension between trust and vulnerability was ever present. The very traits that made Lefty successful: loyalty, mentorship, and interpersonal insight also rendered him exposed. Every secret shared, every operational detail entrusted, and every display of confidence with Donnie Brasco unknowingly contributed to a fragile web of potential compromise. This delicate balance of trust and risk exemplified the inherent vulnerability of life within organized crime, demonstrating how human relationships could be both empowering and perilous. Lefty's operational expertise remained central to his survival and authority. He monitored gambling operations, supervised loan sharking activities, and mediated disputes. Using a combination of psychological insight, negotiation skills, and assertive leadership, this approach maintained operational stability, reinforced loyalty, and ensured the continuity of complex criminal enterprises. Lefty's foresight, intuition, and experience allowed him to anticipate challenges, prevent crises, and maintain equilibrium in an environment marked by volatility and uncertainty. Reflection on his life became increasingly significant. Lefty understood the moral ambiguities of his existence, the consequences of misplaced trust, and the delicate interplay between loyalty, human behavior, and operational necessity. Despite these challenges, he continued to act with purpose, guided by his principles of discretion, fairness, and loyalty. His ability to sustain influence, navigate operational and personal risk, and preserve meaningful human connection amidst pervasive danger highlighted the delicate balance that defined both his professional and personal life. By the mid-1990s, Lefty Ruggiero's life had reached a decisive point. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco, operational acumen, and adherence to a personal code of ethics had created a world that was simultaneously structured and perilous. Every decision carried significance, every interaction held potential consequences, and every relationship demanded careful judgment. Lefty's narrative during this period illustrates the complex interweaving of loyalty, risk, and human connection, offering insight into the realities of life within the mafia. Lefty's experiences epitomize the paradox of power and vulnerability. He was a man of operational brilliance, strategic insight, and authority, yet reliant on relationships and confidences that could be exploited. His story underscores the human dimensions of loyalty, mentorship, and hidden risks, revealing how trust could simultaneously empower and endanger those who wielded it. As Lefty navigated the high-stakes world of the Bonanno family and maintained his bond with Donnie Brasco, the stage was being set for events that would irrevocably challenge his life, testing the limits of trust, loyalty, and resilience. By the mid-1990s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's life had become a tense equilibrium of authority, loyalty, and persistent danger. Decades of service to the Bonanno crime family had secured him respect, influence, and operational control, yet these very accomplishments rendered him vulnerable. Every decision he made, every interaction he engaged in, and every bond he formed carried weight far beyond the immediate moment. Lefty's existence was governed by the dual forces of power and risk, and navigating this precarious balance required acute perception, emotional intelligence, and strategic foresight. In a world ruled by secrecy, loyalty, and the omnipresent threat of betrayal, Lefty had to continuously calibrate his actions to survive. Central to his life remained the relationship with Donnie Brasco. Over the years, Donnie had become an integrated member of the Bonanno family, entrusted with responsibility ranging from gambling operations to mediation of disputes and the oversight of loan sharking activities. Lefty had mentored him through the complex hierarchy of the mafia, teaching him to interpret subtle behavioral cues, anticipate conflicts, and understand the delicate dynamics of loyalty, power, and influence. Donnie was more than a trusted operative. He represented a rare personal connection, a thread of genuine loyalty in a world where trust was a rare commodity. Their bond was both practical and deeply human, providing operational efficiency while offering Lefty a measure of reassurance and companionship amid the constant tension of mafia life. Yet beneath this bond lay an invisible vulnerability. For Donnie's undercover identity had the potential to dismantle everything Lefty had built. The environment surrounding Lefty was increasingly volatile. Rival factions within the Bonanno family, alongside competing mafia organizations, were continuously seeking opportunities to expand influence and capitalize on weaknesses. Law enforcement pressure intensified with every passing year, utilizing undercover agents, long-term surveillance, and sophisticated investigative techniques to infiltrate organized crime networks. Every financial transaction, every conversation, and every meeting carried the potential for exposure. Lefty relied on his instincts, experience, and acute observational skills to detect subtle changes in behavior, anticipate emerging conflicts, and take preemptive measures to protect both himself and the organization. This vigilance was essential to maintain authority, safeguard operations, and preserve personal security. Operationally, Lefty's responsibilities were vast and complex. He oversaw gambling operations across multiple neighborhoods, ensuring accurate accounting, adherence to organizational rules, and swift resolution of disputes. Loan sharking required careful monitoring, strategic negotiation, and oversight of collectors and enforcers who executed day-to-day operations under his supervision. Lefty's leadership blended authority with personal rapport, fostering loyalty while sustaining operational efficiency. His capacity to balance these demands reflected not only his intelligence and experience but also a profound understanding of human behavior, trust, and the nuanced social dynamics of mafia life. Despite the high-pressure nature of his work, Lefty maintained personal connections that offered grounding and emotional support. Time spent with family, old friends, and the Brooklyn community provided brief but critical moments of normalcy, reminding him of the values that had shaped him long before his involvement in organized crime, loyalty, trust, and community. These interactions reinforced his emotional resilience and allowed him to approach operational challenges with clarity, composure, and strategic foresight. In a life defined by volatility and threat, these personal anchors were essential to maintaining his psychological stability. Lefty's personal code remained central to his existence. He was fully aware of the moral ambiguity and illegality of his life, yet he emphasized loyalty, discretion, and responsibility in all decisions. Disputes were resolved thoughtfully to avoid unnecessary violence, and operations were executed with a balance of fairness and strategic oversight. This ethical framework strengthened trust among associates and reinforced his credibility. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco combined practical instruction with personal guidance, developing both operational skills and relational loyalty. This blend of pragmatism and principle defined Lefty's approach to leadership, allowing him to maintain cohesion, stability, and respect within the organization. Donnie Brasco's rising role within the family underscored the depth of trust Lefty had invested in him. Lefty guided him through complex operational decisions, financial oversight, the delicate interpersonal negotiations that influenced the family's hierarchy. Donnie's competence and apparent loyalty allowed Lefty to delegate key responsibilities, streamlining operations while deepening their personal bond. This partnership was a rare combination of operational necessity, human connection, providing reassurance and strategic advantage. Yet the unseen threat of Donnie's undercover identity created an invisible vulnerability that would eventually jeopardize Lefty's life and legacy. Within the Bonanno family, Lefty's influence extended well beyond day-to-day operations. He was consulted for strategic decision-making, entrusted with sensitive information, and relied upon to maintain organizational stability. Authority brought opportunity but also exposure. Each decision carried potential consequences, affecting finances, relationships, and the family's standing with rival factions. Lefty navigated these pressures with intelligence, psychological insight, and strategic foresight. His reputation for fairness, discretion, and competence reinforced his authority and ensured that his guidance was respected and implemented throughout the organization. The tension between trust and vulnerability defined Lefty's daily existence. The same qualities that enabled his success, loyalty, mentorship, and relational intelligence, also exposed him to hidden dangers. Every confidence shared, every operational detail disclosed, and every moment of trust placed in Donnie Brasco unknowingly contributed to a fragile network of potential compromise. This precarious balance highlighted the inherent risks of life within organized crime, where relationships could simultaneously empower and endanger. Lefty's operational expertise remained central to his survival. He closely monitored gambling operations, supervised loan sharking activities, and mediated disputes. Through a combination of psychological insight, negotiation, and decisive leadership, his approach maintained loyalty, reinforced operational efficiency, and sustained the family's complex enterprises. Lefty's foresight, intuition, and years of experience allowed him to anticipate challenges, prevent crises, and maintain continuity in an environment defined by volatility and unpredictability. Reflection on his life became increasingly significant. Lefty recognized the moral complexity of his existence, consequences of misplaced trust, and the delicate interplay between loyalty, human behavior, and operational necessity. Despite these challenges, he continued to act with purpose, guided by principles of discretion, fairness, and loyalty. His ability to sustain influence, navigate personal and operational risk, and maintain meaningful human connection amid pervasive danger exemplified the delicate equilibrium that defined both his personal and professional life. By the mid-1990s, Lefty Ruggiero's life had reached a pivotal juncture. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco, operational skill, and adherence to a personal code had created a life that was structured yet precarious. Every decision carried significance, every interaction held latent consequence, and every relationship required careful management of trust. Lefty's story in this period highlights the intricate interplay of loyalty, risk, and Human connection, offering insight into the realities of life within the mafia. Lefty's experiences epitomize the paradox of power and vulnerability. He was a man of operational brilliance, strategic insight, and authority, yet dependent on relationships and confidences that could be exploited. His narrative underscores the human dimensions of loyalty, mentorship, and hidden danger, revealing how trust could simultaneously empower and imperil those who relied upon it. As Lefty navigated the high-stakes world of the Bonanno family and maintained his bond with Donnie Brasco, the stage was being set for events that would irrevocably test the very foundations of his life, pushing the boundaries of trust, loyalty, and resilience. By the late 1990s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's world had transformed into a precarious tightrope of power, trust, and imminent danger. Years of loyalty to the Bonanno crime family had granted him influence, authority, and a reputation for operational expertise, yet these very qualities also rendered him increasingly vulnerable. Every interaction, every operational decision, and every relationship carried weight, far beyond the immediate moment. Lefty's life was governed by the constant balancing of opportunity and risk, where foresight, intuition, and keen observation were not merely advantageous, they were essential for survival. In the high-stakes universe of organized crime, misjudgment could have catastrophic consequences, and Lefty's existence was a perpetual negotiation between empowerment and exposure. At the center of Lefty's personal and professional life remained his relationship with Donnie Brasco. Over the years, Donnie had become an embedded figure within the Bonanno family, entrusted with complex responsibilities spanning gambling operations, loan sharking oversight, and mediation of internal disputes. Lefty had meticulously mentored him, teaching the subtleties of hierarchy, loyalty, and interpersonal dynamics that defined mafia operations. Donnie was not only an operative but a confidant, a rare source of loyalty and reliability in a world where betrayal was commonplace. Their bond provided operational efficiency, emotional reassurance, and a sense of stability amid the ever-present tension of mafia life. Yet beneath this apparent trust lay an invisible threat. Donnie's undercover identity had the potential to dismantle the very foundations of Lefty's life. The environment in which Lefty operated was increasingly unstable. Rival factions within the Bonanno family and other mafia organizations were constantly probing for opportunities to expand influence, seize territory, and exploit weaknesses. Simultaneously, law enforcement pressure had intensified. Investigators employed sophisticated surveillance, undercover operations, and long-term evidence gathering to penetrate criminal networks. Every financial transaction, every conversation, and every meeting was a potential liability. Lefty relied on intuition, extensive experience, and sharp observational skills to detect subtle changes in behavior, anticipate conflicts, and implement measures that safeguarded both operations and his personal security. This vigilance was critical to sustaining authority and operational stability. Lefty's responsibilities were complex and multifaceted. He supervised gambling operations across multiple neighborhoods, ensuring accurate accounting, compliance with organizational rules, and the timely resolution of disputes. Loan sharking demanded careful oversight, strategic negotiation, and supervision of enforcers and collectors who operated under his direction. Lefty's leadership combined firm authority with personal rapport, fostering loyalty while maintaining operational efficiency. His ability to navigate these intertwined responsibilities reflected a rare combination of intellect, experience, and insight into human behavior, highlighting his skill at managing both people and operations simultaneously. Even amid professional pressures, Lefty maintained personal connections that grounded him. Time with family, long-standing friends, and members of his Brooklyn community offered rare moments of normalcy and reflection. These interactions reinforced values that had guided him long before his life in organized crime: loyalty, trust, and community. These moments of human connection were vital for sustaining emotional resilience, allowing Lefty to approach operational challenges with clarity, strategic foresight, and composure. Lefty's personal code remained central to his life. While fully aware of the moral and legal implications of his actions, he emphasized loyalty, discretion, and responsibility in every decision. Conflicts were addressed thoughtfully to prevent unnecessary violence, and operations were conducted with a careful balance of fairness and pragmatism. This ethical framework reinforced trust among his associates and bolstered his credibility. In mentoring Donnie Brasco, Lefty blended operational instruction with personal guidance, cultivating both skills, relational loyalty. This combination of pragmatism and principle allowed him to maintain cohesion, stability, and respect within the family, ensuring the functionality of operations while preserving human connections. Donnie Brasco's increasing role within the family underscored the depth of trust Lefty had placed in him. Lefty guided Donnie through complex financial oversight, strategic decision-making, and sensitive interpersonal negotiations that affected both operational efficiency and family hierarchy. Donnie's competence and loyalty provided reassurance, allowing Lefty to delegate critical responsibilities and focus on higher-level strategic considerations. Their partnership was an unusual synthesis of operational necessity and personal trust, offering both reassurance and practical advantage. Yet the hidden reality of Donnie's undercover identity represented a latent threat capable of devastating Lefty's life and legacy. Within the Bonanno family, Lefty's influence extended far beyond day-to-day operations. He was consulted on strategic decisions, entrusted with sensitive information, and relied upon to maintain organizational stability. Authority brought both opportunity and exposure. Each decision carried the potential to impact finances, internal relationships, and the family's reputation with rival factions. Lefty navigated these pressures with strategic foresight, operational intelligence, and psychological insight. His reputation for fairness, discretion, and competence reinforced his authority and ensured that his guidance was respected across the organization. The tension between trust and vulnerability remained ever present, the very qualities that had enabled Lefty's success. Loyalty, mentorship, and relational intelligence also rendered him susceptible to hidden threats. Every shared confidence, every operational detail, and every moment of trust with Donnie Brasco unknowingly contributed to a fragile network of potential compromise. This delicate balance exemplified the inherent vulnerability of life within organized crime, demonstrating that relationships could simultaneously empower and endanger. Lefty's operational expertise remained central to his survival. He closely monitored gambling operations, oversaw loan sharking activities, and mediated disputes using a combination of insight, negotiation, and assertive leadership. His approach maintained loyalty, reinforced operational efficiency, and ensured the continuity of complex criminal enterprises. Lefty's experience, foresight, and intuition allowed him to anticipate challenges, prevent crises, and maintain stability in an environment defined by volatility and uncertainty. Reflection on his life had become increasingly significant. Lefty understood the moral complexity of his existence, the consequences of misplaced trust, and the intricate interplay between loyalty, human behavior, and operational necessity. Despite the risks, he continued to act with purpose, guided by principles of discretion, fairness, and loyalty. His ability to sustain influence, navigate operational and personal risk, and preserve meaningful human connection amidst pervasive danger illustrated the delicate balance that defined his personal and professional life. By the late 1990s, Lefty Ruggiero's life had reached a defining moment. His mentorship of Donnie Brasco, operational skill, and adherence to a personal code of ethics had created a life that was both structured and vulnerable. Every decision carried significance, every interaction had potential consequence, and every relationship required careful management of trust. Lefty's story during this period highlights the delicate interplay of loyalty, risk, and human connection, offering insight into the complex realities of life within the mafia. Lefty's experiences epitomize the paradox of power and vulnerability. He was a man of operational brilliance and strategic foresight, yet dependent on relationships and confidence that could be exploited. His narrative underscores the human dimensions of loyalty, mentorship, and hidden risk, demonstrating how trust could simultaneously empower and imperil those who relied upon it. As Lefty navigated the high-stakes world of the Bonanno family and maintained his bond with Donnie Brasco, the stage was being set for revelation and consequences that would irrevocably test the foundations of his life, challenging the very limits of trust, loyalty, and resilience. By the late 1990s, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's life had become a fragile balancing act between authority, loyalty, and imminent danger. Decades of service to the Bonanno crime family had secured him a position of influence and respect, yet these accomplishments also rendered him exceptionally vulnerable. Every decision, interaction, and relationship carried enormous weight, and the omnipresent threat of betrayal or law enforcement intervention made each day a high-stakes negotiation. Lefty's existence had become a study in the precarious equilibrium between empowerment and exposure, where intuition, foresight, and meticulous observation were not optional, they were essential for survival. At the center of Lefty's world remained his relationship with Donnie Brasco. Over the years, Donnie had become a deeply embedded figure within the Bonanno family, entrusted with responsibility spanning gambling operations, loan sharking oversight, and mediation of internal disputes. Lefty had meticulously guided him through the complexities of mafia hierarchy, teaching him to interpret behavioral cues, anticipate conflicts, and navigate the subtle interplay of loyalty, trust, and power. Donnie was more than a trusted operative. He was a confidant, a rare source of loyalty in a world where betrayal was the norm. Their partnership offered operational efficiency and emotional reassurance, providing Lefty with a sense of stability amid the perpetual tension that defined mafia life. Yet beneath this trust lay an unseen danger. Donnie's undercover identity as an FBI agent posed a threat capable of unraveling everything Lefty had worked to build. By this stage in his life, Lefty had become acutely aware of the fragility of trust. The mafia, while structured and hierarchical, was a world governed as much by human emotions as by rules and agreements. Ambition, greed, jealousy, and fear-shaped decisions and alliances could shift overnight. Even the most loyal associates could be compromised under pressure, and the consequences of misplaced trust were severe. Lefty understood that his ability to survive and maintain influence depended on both operational acumen and the careful management of human relationships. Operationally, Lefty continued to oversee gambling operations, ensuring accurate accounting, enforcement of rules, and the prompt resolution of disputes to prevent escalation into violence. Loan sharking remained a critical source of revenue, requiring him to supervise collectors, manage repayment schedules, and maintain the delicate balance between pressure and control. His leadership style combined authority with personal rapport, cultivating loyalty while sustaining efficiency. Lefty's experience, intelligence, and understanding of human nature allowed him to manage a complex web of operations while maintaining his credibility and influence within the family. Personal connections provided Lefty with grounding and perspective amidst the high-stakes chaos of his professional life. Time spent with family, friends, and the Brooklyn community offered fleeting but essential moments of normalcy and emotional support. These interactions reminded him of the values that had shaped him long before he entered organized crime: loyalty, trust, and the importance of human connection. Even brief moments of ordinary life helped him maintain clarity, resilience, and composure in the midst of ongoing operational pressures and threats. Lefty's personal code continued to guide his decisions. While fully aware of the legal and moral implications of his actions, he emphasized loyalty, discretion, and responsibility. Conflicts were addressed thoughtfully to avoid unnecessary violence, and operations were conducted with fairness and strategic oversight. This code strengthened trust among his associates and bolstered his credibility. Mentoring Donnie Brasco was a reflection of this approach. Lefty combined practical guidance with relational mentorship, cultivating both competence and loyalty. The relationship, however, was a double-edged sword, as the unseen reality of Donnie's undercover identity introduced a vulnerability that would have profound consequences. Donnie's growing role in the family underscored the depth of trust Lefty had placed in him. Lefty guided him through complex financial oversight, operational decisions, and sensitive interpersonal negotiation. Donnie's apparent loyalty allowed Lefty to delegate critical responsibility, which streamlined operations and reinforced the partnership. Yet, every shared confidence, every detail entrusted to Donnie, unknowingly expanded the web of vulnerability surrounding Lefty. The very bond that had been a source of strength and reassurance became a potential point of collapse. Lefty's influence within the Bonanno family extended far beyond day-to-day operation. He was frequently consulted on strategic decisions, entrusted with sensitive information, and relied upon to maintain cohesion and stability within the organization. Authority brought both opportunity and exposure. Each decision carried potential consequences for finances, relationships, and the family's reputation among rival factions. Lefty navigated these pressures with strategic foresight, operational intelligence, and keen psychological insight. His reputation for fairness, competence, and discretion reinforced his authority, ensuring that his guidance was respected throughout the organization. The tension between trust and vulnerability had never been more acute. Lefty's very qualities, loyalty, mentorship, relational intelligence that had enabled his success, also made him susceptible to unforeseen threats. Each shared secret and every operational detail contributed to a fragile network of potential compromise. This delicate balance underscored the inherent risks of life in organized crime, where relationships could simultaneously empower and imperil those who relied upon them. By this point, law enforcement pressure on the Bonanno family had intensified. Undercover operations, wiretaps, and surveillance networks had infiltrated the organization to a degree previously unseen. The FBI had meticulously documented financial records, monitored communications, and collected evidence to ensure that the activities of the family could be prosecuted with irrefutable precision. Lefty, despite his experience and intuition, could not anticipate the scope of the breach that Donnie Brasco's infiltration represented. The very loyalty that he had nurtured, the mentorship he had provided, and the trust he had placed in his protege were being leveraged against him in ways that would have devastating consequences. Lefty's operational expertise, while formidable, could not prevent the unraveling of trust. He continued to oversee gambling and loan sharking operations, mediate disputes, and manage enforcers with authority and intelligence. Yet the internal threat created by Donnie's undercover status was a vulnerability that could not be mitigated through skill alone. His careful balance of discretion, oversight, and relational intelligence, which had maintained stability for decades, now faced a challenge that tested every principle upon which he had built his career. As the web of infiltration became apparent, the reality of betrayal cast a shadow over Lefty's life. The man he had mentored, trusted, and relied upon for years was secretly an agent working against him. Every moment of confidence shared, every strategic discussion, and every operational detail had been recorded, documented, and prepared to dismantle the very structures that Lefty had cultivated. The consequences were severe, not merely operational, but deeply personal. His credibility, relationships, and freedom were all at risk. A stark reminder of the inherent fragility of trust in a world defined by secrecy and danger. Reflection on his life at this juncture highlighted both the achievements and vulnerabilities that defined Lefty Ruggiero. He had navigated decades of organized crime with skill, intelligence, and an acute understanding of human behavior. He had cultivated loyalty, mentored a promising associate, and maintained operational control in an environment marked by volatility. Yet, the very trust he had extended, the bonds he had nurtured, and the relationships he had built became instruments of his own undoing. The paradox of empowerment and vulnerability, the dual forces that had defined his life, was now starkly illuminated. Lefty's story in the final chapter is a testament to the delicate interplay of loyalty, risk, and human connection within organized crime. It reveals how trust can simultaneously sustain and imperil those who wield it, how mentorship can create both strength and vulnerability, and how authority and influence carry hidden exposures that even the most experienced cannot always anticipate. Lefty's life illustrates the human dimensions of crime, the complexity of relationships, and the ever-present tension between control and exposure that defines the world of the mafia. By the end of his journey, Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero's life encapsulates the ultimate lesson of trust and vulnerability. He was a man of operational brilliance, strategic insight, and authority, yet entirely dependent on relationships and confidences that could, and ultimately did, undermine him. His narrative exemplifies the human costs of loyalty, mentorship, and deception, and the profound consequence of misjudged trust. In the final analysis, Lefty's story is not merely a chronicle of organized crime, but a reflection on the delicate, often perilous, balance between power, human connection, and vulnerability.